Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 55 of Ken's Counseling Couch. I am your host, Ken Jennings, allegedly, which I think I told the story last week of the person, or earlier this week when I did my midweek stream about Nick, who, if you haven't noticed, is back on YouTube, by the way. Congrats to Nick. But someone in my Twitter DMs thought I was the real Ken Jennings and was happy to see me back on Jeopardy. I'll have to grab a screenshot of that later. But today we're going to be talking about a kind of, and again, I'm a little behind on getting started here. My broken tooth completely broke off the day before, so I've been in a little bit of pain. Yeah, so that's been fun, and it was why I kind of slept in today. But today we'll be discussing some kind of controversial, given the nature of the topic, the case of 12-year-old Sean Daugherty. Daugherty, I think that's how you say it. I suck at pronunciation sometimes. But this is a 12-year-old child who was, and we'll go over it in a bit more detail here shortly. But as a brief summary, he was a 12-year-old male who was left home to babysit his 2-year-old sibling. Parents were supposed to be gone for like 45 minutes. He was at a total home about an hour and a half, I think, with his sibling. When his sister arrived home, she found him hanging from the swing set in his backyard, suspended from a nylon drawstring from like a motorcycle helmet bag. And his head was also covered with a motorcycle helmet bag, and his hands were, according to the mother's statements in Facebook community, they were quote unquote pinned to his side with a belt from his father's clothing. And he was also wearing his stepfather's clothing. He was wearing his stepfather's clothing, I believe it was a t-shirt or a button-up, and was wearing his stepfather's underwear, and had changed out of his clothing, which they haven't been able to find, except the child's underwear, which is found in the parents' bedroom after they searched the house for stuff to see where the kid was, to find out more about what had happened. There's a lot of details about this case. And again, this happened in April. This recently, within the last week or so, has become an extremely popular thing on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I can't tell you how many true crime shows I've seen covering it in just the last few days. And what sickens me about it is the way people have been covering it. And I believe, and I'll put my thoughts out there early. I'll be the first to say that, to me, it looks like a case of suicide. I've watched several of the different true crime YouTubers on this. I also watched 2 separate videos by a criminal profiler who has offered her services pro bono about the case to try and assist the family with determining whether or not it was a murder. But the profiler believes, with the current available evidence, that it was suicide. And I think the profiler's analysis of the case is pretty accurate. Because she's, one, an expert in this and has been doing it for years. And 2, when you take the totality of the evidence, I think it makes sense and adds up. There's a lack of evidence for suicide or for homicide. There's statements from the family that point towards the kid being happy, that he was a happy child, and they go and point out statements that the mom and stepdad and family and others say don't sound right, that this kid would have killed himself because he was a happy child. He was, he had reasons to live. He wanted to be president. He had large aspirations in his life or whatever. And that, while sounds great at face value and can point towards, a concerning situation and possibly a, death that might not have been on the up and up, I don't think is enough to undo the facts of the case. So what I'm going to do is try and, because I kind of was on the fly here putting some of this together. I've been thinking about doing this for a few days, but because I wasn't feeling good this morning, I don't have all my stuff ready to go as it is. And so I've got my guest who is now here. I can say for a fact she's here. Tracy's here. Welcome, Tracy, from Calming the Chaos. Make sure you guys check out her channel. Actually, let me spam that in the chat real quick. How you doing?
I'm good. How's the old tooth doing?
It broke off the day before, and so it's as soon as they'll see me, it's Tuesday, and even better is I have a job interview tomorrow for a position, so that means I get to do my job interview or preliminary interview, I guess is what they're calling it, tomorrow. But I get to do that without missing front tooth. So.
Oh wow! So
Yeah.
It's an in-person or a Zoom that they have to see your face?
It's a Zoom one.
Oh gosh! Wow. Too bad you can't hide behind that icon you got there
I know,
for
right?
your interview. Wouldn't that be cool?
It would be.
My camera broke.
Well, I've got the little pop-up. Because I've been reorganizing my office. My office is gonna become a bedroom for someone else here in a couple months, but not mine, but for family member. But so my office is going away, so I've been reorganizing. So thankfully I have one of those pop-up green screens that slides over the back of your chair. They're like $10 at Five Below or whatever. And so they're nice to have. They fold up, you can put them into a little bag, and it's pretty damn big. It's what I've used whenever I've had my VTuber avatar up on the screen. I don't know if you remember those whenever I'll have to pull that up one day. It's pretty interesting. But
I've always wondered about those green screens. If they work really pretty good, the ones that go on the back of your chair?
The biggest issue you have with people with green screens is not so much it works as far as it stays attached to your chair and everything. It's the software and whether or not you have it lit properly. And making sure you're wearing clothing that's not the same color. If you have an actual green screen versus like a blue one, which there are different colors, or you can make your own from material. I mean, my first green screen was a piece of poster board with fluorescent green construction paper glue sticked onto it. Was the very first one I made. It was like $2 or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Creative.
it doesn't take much to make one. It's about making sure that in your software you do it right. Because I have an RTX 20 series graphics card in my laptop. I have the ability to use not only NVIDIA Broadcast for my voice, I can also use it for green screening and background removal too. So I have a software that is pretty good at it, plus OBS is good at it. If you do it right, if you set it up right, it works okay. But if you suck at it, it's not so well. I used it during the pandemic a bit with, when I was doing telehealth with clients, so they didn't see my office, I would put up interesting backgrounds. Like, I had like a Game of Thrones one, I had some other funny one, and the kids loved it because they thought it was the funniest thing. Because it was just something that's like, oh, well, and so I would just switch it or put a video in the background of like fish or something. Like, oh, look, I'm swimming. So, but,
how does that help with your tooth, though? How is that going to help them not see the missingness?
No,
of
it's
your
just going to help keep the mess of me cleaning up my office, but
okay.
hopefully it'll distract them from the fact that my front tooth's missing. I'm going to try and not open my mouth enough for them to see my tooth. So, but
wow, gosh, so Tuesday is tooth day for you.
Tuesday's tooth day, Monday's interview day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know, I've been trying to get the Ken's Counseling Couch Blues song written, but things keep happening to you that are so tragic, and I can't get it done because things keep happening to you, and I have to continuously add to it. So sadly, it's not done.
Yeah, it takes a bit out of me. You could say that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh man. Sure. Yeah.
But thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I know that we've been briefly talking about this case in Discord, and I think you have a bit of a different take on it than I do, which I'm looking forward to hearing.
I know I didn't want to share all my secrets, but I am not completely convinced it's a suicide, and I think you are pretty much siding with law enforcement, is what I'm hearing you say, right?
Not necessarily siding with law enforcement. I believe that the law enforcement perspective on it gives a good observation of the event that happened. I think that, plus watching the criminal profiler I was talking about, I don't know if you heard that before you jumped on, but I think Pat Brown is her name. She's a criminal profiler, and she's done now 2 videos on this case, and her perspective on it is actually really interesting. I was kind of shocked at the level of detail she went into some of this with publicly available evidence, was offering to go pro bono and analyze it, even though she, with available information, thinks it looks more like a suicide. She's willing to do a pro bono, go and look at any other evidence, look at autopsy reports and other stuff. And I don't see where, because the way I'm looking at it, and having, and I know you work with kids too, and adults, right? So you worked with both, and I'm sure you've worked with, suicidal ideation that's bad, especially with eating disorders, which is your specialty. That's probably a pretty common theme I would expect to see. I can see where a 12-year-old is getting into this state where they're hiding everything. As a 12-year-old who hid everything from their parents and would be shocked to know the shit I did at 12 years old, they would never have thought any of the stuff was going on.
So you're coming from a perspective of personal experience, right? Like when you were keeping secrets from people around you, which may or may not be happening in Sean's case. But what they're painting him. The family's painting him as a picture of just a very perfectly happy boy, and had some little bullying thing back in December with some girls at a school that had been resolved. He'd just gotten back from a Disney cruise and was going to go on another Disney cruise to Alaska in August, and then in April all this happened, and so it's interesting because I'm thinking about it in terms of what happened with the Watts case and the family.
I'm not too familiar with that case. So
what's that?
I'm not too familiar with that case. If you could give us a brief summary of it.
That's the when Colorado, Chris Watts, he actually confessed to murdering his wife and two young daughters, and then stuffing them into oil tanks, and then burying the pregnant mom in a shallow grave. It was pretty grisly. In that, yeah, it was back in 2018 that happened. But the difference between this one and that one, I mean, there's a lot of differences, but it's about how the family's reacting. The family in that case just didn't want anybody to go out on wild speculations or to try and argue with what had been determined and confessed to. They sort of wanted to keep it low key, but then social media got a hold of it, and it's one of the bigger cases on YouTube if you want to look at true crime. And it all seems to come back to Watts somehow. And in this case, we've got the family all over wanting everybody to get involved. What happened to Sean Facebook page? I don't know if you've been on it. I actually haven't been on it, but I was on one of the true crime creators went on it and read every single thing, every single post on their Facebook page. And they seem to want to give a lot of detail about what happened that day, and also invite people to speculate. And so it's exactly the opposite of what happened with Watts. So it's a little confounding to me, but still it's interesting.
One of the things that really stood out to me, that I don't know if it's the mom's writing or if it's there's a private investigator that's been hired as a family to look into the case. And also, sorry if you're hearing mic noise. It's my stupid little elastic thingy that holds my mic, the shock absorber, came undone. So I'm trying to fix all the little elastic cabling as I'm talking. So if you're noises, I apologize. But the account that's on the Facebook page is written in almost a narrative. And someone in one of the, I have a screenshot of it somewhere, but someone was talking about the way it's written is almost like they're pointing at details and then kind of like self-validating the information by the way that it's written. And I thought it was an interesting observation because it's saying, well, here's the detail that, why would it be this way? And the narrative is validating itself. And that's not to say narrative as in it's false. It's narrative as in it's the way it's written. It's more of a story form versus a fact form. And to me, that really stood out when I read it, when I was reading through somebody's post, because it's not how I would write it. I would write factual information. I wouldn't be putting it in such a story format. You would think, I would think, and maybe I'm wrong for it, that you would want it to be done in a way that analyzes the details and the evidence, not the other parts of it, if that makes sense. I don't know if that is coming through for you.
I noticed that too, but it kind of drew me in. And now that you're saying that, I'm thinking, wow, so it does draw you into the story emotionally when they do that narrative format. And so I can see how maybe some people who read it will get an emotional reaction to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe something was missed, or somebody did something wrong, didn't check something out, whatever it might be, because of this. I don't know if it wasn't even a flowery narrative. It was just a more a narrative that made you feel like you were walking through the experience emotionally.
Yeah. So I found the screenshot I took of it. I'll read it real quick. It's not too long.
Sure.
It says, it's from someone on one of the true crime YouTubers that has been really, I'll say it bluntly, fucking it up and just making up some of this shit. But someone said, something bothers me about the narrative way in which the mother wrote this story out. It's something that should be presented factually and in a linear fashion. The narrative style is overdramatic, non-factual, and non-linear. I don't know what is true about what she is saying and what is false. That's a problem. She spends way too much time on embellishments that she wants to point you towards rather than presenting hard facts. I don't care that her daughter locked eyes with the gardener. It's not important unless you want the audience towards the gardener. Something about the case doesn't sit right. Something about Ellie's reaction doesn't sit right. But something about the way the mother's presenting the story also doesn't sit right. So I don't know if that makes sense with, because I guess that from what I've been able to get through the flowery language of some of the true crime people is that the mom or the family has pointed fingers strongly at either the gardeners or a neighbor as being the perpetrator. And they can't say it for obvious reasons, for fear of defamation lawsuits, but they pointed their anger and frustration towards these people as being the possible perpetrators. And when you think about that information based on what this person's saying, is if the sister's locking eyes with the gardener, it does draw your attention to the gardener. Not that this is like, if I was writing it, sister came home and saw the gardener next door, but the gardener was doing their thing. Not, locked eyes with the gardener. Not like I don't want to say like a romance novel, but it's coming out in a fashion I would expect to see in a story. And again, whether it's a story to tell the information, and maybe whether it's the mom, I don't know if it's the mom's writing or if it's the investigator, but someone's writing it that way, and that's the way it comes off. And to me, that doesn't sit like someone I would be presenting for. If I want someone to come and support me, like if I want someone to support something I'm saying, I'm going to put it all out there in the most evidence-based way I can. And maybe that's me, but I don't know. It just, that to me, I thought was an interesting observation by someone. But I've been bothered by the way people have been like just going out there, and I think Pat Brown mentioned this, the profiler, that everyone has to agree. Everyone must agree that this is the case, and almost like a bully tactic. Like how is it 99% of people online think that this is a murder? You think it's a suicide, or because people in comments will get bullied when they say it's a suicide, that they think it's a suicide. Well, how could everyone else agrees that there's something wrong with this case, but you don't? Is it all 99% of these other people wrong? No, I'm not saying that, but.
Well, I am going to ask you, what do you think that the risk factors would have been? And because I don't see that there were any that we know of. And now you've already said something about 12-year-old boys keep secrets, and we know that.
Boys are very good at keeping secrets.
So do 12-year-old girls as well. But usually there are some signs of at least changing behaviors, or I don't know.
I'll go out there and put these risk factors on the table. I will say that, actually, let me see if I can pull up not a PowerPoint, but a Google slide so I can write this shit down. That might make it easier to keep track of it. But I think you have the risk factors of two parents in the military. According to the mom and the stepdad are both in the military. Mom's a light colonel, and so she's a field grade officer, so that comes with a lot of time at work, a lot of, the sibling. The 12-year-old was watching the 2-year-old, and the mom said that the son was, he was happy, he loved watching his 2-year-old sibling. What 12-year-old really wants to babysit a 2-year-old? Like, I've babysat younger cousins and stuff, and you do it because you have to, not necessarily because you want to. I'd rather be playing video games or something.
I think that's what he was planning on doing, that after he did his chores and did his, that's the thing. He did his homework. He started to do his chores.
Fine. I don't think that's suspicious at all.
If he was planning on committing suicide, why would he want to complete his homework and
actually more common than you would think is a lot of people. One of the things, and I know it's because I was scanning comments and stuff over this, is one person in one of these true crime podcast or true crime YouTubers said, "I'm going to clear up a misconception here. Something needs to be hold on. They think that foul play, but I don't think it's the manner of his actions prior to it that screams it being foul play. First-hand experience, my cousin did his homework and his chores, including his job of peeling and cutting up the veggies before dinner and putting them on the stove to cook. However, that boy loved food, so when he didn't appear at the table when dinner was served, alarm bells went off. He was found an hour later in a tree, a 5-minute walk from the house. Another young friend did similar, did chores, homework, changing the comfy house clothes. I've been talking to her dad on the phone while starting to get dinner happening. See you soon, love you. Took 3 weeks to find them." So a lot of people don't like leaving things undone. Don't like that would bother them, even though they're thinking about ending their life. It's I have homework to do. It makes no sense. You would think that you don't care about doing it, but it's still something that you don't want to leave undone. Like
kind of like a loose end. You don't.
It is tying up loose ends.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and it might make no sense, But again, we're talking, and you and I know this all too well. The mind of someone who's suicidal isn't always the most clear and rational. It doesn't always make sense. So while you can, on one hand, say, I need to finish my homework and get food ready, or get snacks ready, or clean up, or take the trash out, but I'm going to go kill myself afterwards. It doesn't seem like you would make those thoughts, but you're also not thinking clearly. You're at the point where everything else hurts so bad that I'm done. It is where you're at.
Well, all right. Then one of his responsibilities was taking care of his 2-year-old brother. And so why would he leave that responsibility undone then? And he would do his homework. He would start taking out the trash, and he would make himself a snack or put a peach in a bowl, is what I had seen on Facebook. And leave the whole idea of the baby brother unattended to if he was being responsible.
So again, this is more inference than evidence because of what we have. The mom said she was only going to be gone for 45 minutes, right? I think that was the time frame she had put in. Hey, watch your brother. I got to go do this appointment, which knowing appointments, they don't take 45 minutes.
Exactly.
That was a bad estimate, but to a 12-year-old, mom could be home in 45 minutes, right? So by the time, because she had left and talked to him 3 times, which that's quite a few times to call your kid while you're gone for an hour. But I don't know if that's helicopter momming or not, but whatever. He was supposed to be gone for, let's call it an hour. Apparently the kid was asleep, allegedly, when all this went down after the mom had come home and all this other stuff. The kid was apparently asleep. The parents said he was hiding under clothes or was found under clothes or something. But you think my siblings, because if the timeline was the way it was, he could have done all the things, ended his life, and mom and whoever was supposed to be home very shortly, within 10 minutes. So the sibling was going to be asleep. Maybe assumed he takes so long a nap. Mom will be home to take care of him. He'll be fine. Well, it'll be 10 minutes until mom gets home. He'll be fine. Mm-hmm. It's not like he has
It's interesting you say the helicopter mom piece, though, because I hadn't really thought about that. I remember hearing the 3 phone calls in a really short period of time. Like, she's telling him what to do, like, wake up your brother because your brother is going to be napping too long. If you don't wake him up, he's not going to go to sleep later. And so that does kind of seem a little helicopter mom-ish. So I think I told you in Discord that I would really like to know a little bit more about the family dynamics. There were
I would too.
Kids. Yeah, I would love to know what was going on in that family. Really, what was really going on. She's apparently from Latvia, so there might be a bit of a cultural thing where you treat children a little bit less independently than we do in the U.S. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it might have been that he was going along with the helicopter mom piece, but not really liking it. But I don't know that that's a reason to kill yourself.
I wouldn't say that the helicopter. And also, hold on, I had something screw up. I gotta restart my. Hold on, I think I can do it this way.
Oh, hey, Alyssa. I see everybody here. Oh, and there's Spectre. Spectre's here too. Hey, great job on that talk with our friend.
Yes,
CK.
thank you Spectre. That was amazing. We're gonna touch on that later at some point, because I might do that on local specifically to not put it on this stream. But yeah. So I think I don't think it was like, oh, mom. And again, depending on what's been going through this kid's mind, the mom has painted him as a very happy kid, but that doesn't mean that, because I truly think that mom might be a bit, what's the way to phrase it? There's that guilt there from, losing her son. And there's that, I could have done something, I could have saved him. God damn it, it messed up again. For some reason, it's not letting me log into my Google Slides, so I fucked it up again. Give me 1 second to come right back in.
It's just another thing to add to the Ken's Counseling Couch Blues song. My system, like my ass got fired, my my van broke down, my tooth fell out, and my system's fucking up on me again.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep, I'm back. I heard you the whole time because I have both tabs open. Is that what's open?
Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg because I've got all.
Yeah.
Oh, am I by myself? Wait, don't
you're
abandon
back.
me. I've got abandonment issues.
I know. But
Yeah.
I think that there's likely more to the story. And again, we have, because the police said, they did their own video. They said, we don't want to comment on, we normally don't comment on this, but because we're being attacked, it's basically our investigation being done shoddily, and that there's information coming out saying that the investigation was poor, that we didn't investigate things, and that the mom is misconstruing the truth or lying, or the fabrication of information. So they were trying to clear up things on their end, because now they've got hundreds or thousands of people bombarding. I go on their Twitter, every tweet has comments, what happened to Sean? 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 What happened to Sean?
Yeah, that's gonna be annoying for them, right?
I'm sure it's annoying for them, and I will be the first to say that police do fuck things up all the time. It's not uncommon, but I with just the information that's presented, between both sides, and even giving more favor to mom, I still think you end up more with suicide being a more logical explanation. I think a lot of people are working from an emotional perspective, and I've seen this, and I'm sure if I showed you some of these comments, they're like, there's no way a 12-year-old would kill themselves. I'm like, yeah, you really don't want to see those statistics. I'm like, those statistics are mind-numbingly awful. Like,
well, how do you explain then the way in which he was found, which apparently was a belt was strapped around both of his arms, tied to his sides of his body? How in the world did he do that to himself?
I think that's the easiest thing to explain. If
well,
I could execute that, I could execute the entire thing. I could execute the entire strangulation or hanging, however you want to call it, within 10 seconds. Is you have the string, you tie it to the swing set, whether standing on a chair or not, because again, he wasn't that far off the ground. So you tie it to the swing set, you place the string around the neck as.
But he has to have his hands to do that, so he's not strapped in yet. Here,
I'm getting that. Yeah, you haven't engaged the weight. You haven't put the weight on the neck to cut off blood supply or air supply. So you get that ready. You put the bag on the head. There's probably several reasons for the bag. There's one of many, and then you can tie the belt around your waist and then shove your arms in, so that way you don't reactively try to take this thing away from your neck. It would be more of a, because it doesn't take long if you do it right. If like doing a blood choke or doing it right, you can choke someone out in 10, 20 seconds. So all you needed was 10, 20 seconds to resist yourself until you passed out for the hanging to finish. It doesn't have to be a full hanging where your body is completely suspended. You just need enough weight, and that's why the parents were like, he could have stood, his body was close enough to where he could kneel or stand up, or because he was 5'10", I believe, is what I found so far. So he was I believe he was a tall kid. For 12, I mean, but I was tall too, so as a kid. So
gosh, you look so tiny in those pictures that I've seen.
Again, I think that's what it is. I'm not sure. That's what I think he is, because someone said he was a tall kid, and I saw the number 5'10" somewhere. I think I saw it more than once somewhere. But if he was 5'10", then the stepdad's clothing isn't going to be this like draping thing. It's just going to be a little bit long, which I've worn. So it's not going to be like it's like a foot of clothing. It might be a few inches of clothing. Maybe makes it hard to walk. Maybe makes it, and I don't remember if they said he was. I don't remember if they said he was actually wearing pants or just wearing his underwear.
He was wearing underwear and then a pants and a shirt and they're all his stepfather's clothes. Those three items of clothing.
That I have so many ideas on, but I have no idea, in fact, where those could be coming from, because and here's one of the things that interests me the most is the biological father. Nada. We have no information. There's no talk about the bio dad. I don't know if there's because, in a situation where, and again, don't know what age the kid was when mom separated from dad. We don't know if dad's in the picture or not, none of that. But assuming dad's still somewhat involved, maybe knows of him, talks to them, visits him occasionally, right?
Yeah.
I know my relationship with my stepdad was tense during my puberty and puberty years. There was a lot of hate there. I loved my dad. I love my stepdad as an adult. It took time to figure that out and process all that. As a kid, I fucking hated him. I'll say that way. There were things that he did that were probably a bit verbally or emotionally abusive, just because of the way he treated me. But I can now, as an adult, kind of be okay with some of it, and that's just me accepting it. But just some of that was I didn't think it was appropriate. But if sometimes my dad or my stepdad would talk shit about my dad. I didn't like that. If the mom was moving to a new position, and again, both mom and stepdad in the military, I think both are officers, so both are probably, at least 04 to 06, and mom was 06, because she was a lieutenant colonel. No, 05. 06 is, my bad. So she's in 05.
Was she Army, do you know, or was she Air Force? She's going to the Pentagon for some reason. She was going to be transferring. Oh, Air Force then.
The true crime thing of, maybe he was killed as a message to the mom or the dad because he's going to the Pentagon. I'm like, people work in the Pentagon as like finance people that make sure you get paid. People work there as personnel people. Like, just because you work at the Pentagon, like literally every base you go to has people from food services to personnel to finances to, like, my job was one of the really cool jobs, like, one of the strategic jobs, not intelligence, but more surveillance type of job. Like, so you have the cool jobs, then you have the, jobs that help support the, you have the tip of the spear, which is like your war fighters, and then you have the people that support the rest of it, that make sure everything gets running, your motor pool and all that. So there's a bunch of things that you could be put at the Pentagon for. It doesn't mean mom or stepdad in a position that they're being, again, I tried figuring out the mom's job. I tried looking her name up, couldn't find anything about base or placement, so using her name, I tried finding her any LinkedIn's, any information about whether she was, where she was going and any potential last places she may have been. I couldn't find her as like being in charge of any units or anything. So I don't think she had any like major pull. That doesn't mean you can't be blackmailed. You can't be, used as an asset for that kind of stuff. But I think that's a far reach. So again,
she could be secret ops. They keep that stuff top secret.
But if you were secret ops, it would be more suspicious to not have something public facing. You would have something just normal, because there was, for example, a position in my career field that you couldn't know about until you had a clearance, because of the way that the foreign national government works, and the way it actually worked is you weren't to go do that position. You were no longer a part of the military. You were actually separated out. You were put into a different agency while you were there. Then when you got back from that place, you were put back into there. It was really cool, really neat, really nice digs to stay at. I'll say that much. But so there are positions like that, but you still need to have something that doesn't make it look like, you would still have some sort of way to not look suspicious. It's having nothing look suspicious. As much as I don't like having a link, I hate having a LinkedIn, but I have one because I'm a professional and I kind of have to have one. They go, oh, where's your social media? I'd rather point at my LinkedIn than my Facebook. My Facebook is locked the fuck down because I've been posting on it since I was a teenager. No one sees I have a family and friends because I don't want any fucking job recruiters seeing that shit. You could go look at my LinkedIn, which has my resume and stuff on it. So, I just, a lot of these jumps are, I think, the mind of someone who watches a lot of the true crime shit on TV and goes, oh, it could be this this crazy theory, and it's not like, it's like the Pat Brown, the criminal profiler said, it's someone in one of the comment replies she put, and I think someone in a comment had mentioned it as well, is a lot of the people in these communities are like, why aren't the police looking at every piece of evidence? Where the police don't look at every piece of evidence. They look at pieces that are necessary and important. Because if you start looking at everything, like the color of the handles of the trash bag, does it really matter? Does it really matter, or do you start going down rabbit holes where you never get information in case it closed and things done? Like, you sure you just didn't accidentally buy trash bags, or someone swung by Dollar Tree and picked up a cheap thing of trash bags one day by accident because we were out and we needed them because we don't have a Costco trip for a week, and they got stuck in the back of the pantry for months until, oh, hey, we grabbed them, and the kid grabbed them or someone grabbed them, and they got to come out. They're not red, they're blue. Oops. Like, so is that really where we're going? Because if you start going down all these rabbit holes, you never ever get anything done. You never get actual information, and you start, like, if we were to start doing the same thing with like a biopsychosocial, we start going down every rabbit hole that comes up that doesn't matter. That all these little things that can have information, but are they really how we want to spend our hour? We have 1 hour a week with a client, give or take, assuming private practice or whatever, maybe 2 if you're lucky. In your 2 hours, do you want to spend all that time going down rabbit holes that don't matter? Or do you focus on the pertinent things, the things that are, one, A, obvious, or B, clear to you, or B, that you can uncover with more digging? That, because if you have a finite resource, finite time, how much do you spend of that digging into trash bag handles, the gardener, trying to go? I mean, to be fair, it looks like a suicide.
I like the way that you're comparing psychosocial, like what we do as counselors, to what has happened with the criminal investigations, and that we look at the important pieces. And I think a lot of it, from being a counselor and doing my own job, I think pretty well, is that intuition piece, is knowing which rabbit holes not to go down and which ones to sort of push. And I'm not sure that all counselors do that. And I'm not sure that all law enforcement officers do that. I'm not sure that all baristas do that. I'm not sure that anybody in any occupation always does that and has that intuitive sense about where to go and where not to go.
Like we have ours, but I'm sure the investigators and detectives have theirs. Like, that makes no sense. Like, why? It's like, I'm sure they're in their head like, it's a trash bag, where we have that with our clients. We're like, is that where you might redirect in counseling, versus a detective can kind of just be like, nah. Or, we might go, well, instead of that, why isn't this something that we should focus on? And that might be the more important thing. And then you find out if it's the more important thing. Maybe you're wrong, and then you go, okay, maybe the client had a reason to go down that rabbit hole. Or I've been down rabbit holes that have wasted time. Some of them have been helpful, some of them aren't. But
the other thing I heard is that that Sean was very familiar with other ways to be able to rope himself up that would be more effective and stronger, versus I guess this was a tie from a helmet cover that he used, and also covering his head. And so if he'd been in the know about a stronger sort of cable or twine that was available in the garage somewhere that he could have used, why didn't he use that? Why did he choose
that? I think there's an explanation for that too.
I love this, because you're answering all my questions. Not like you've convinced me yet, but I'm pushing back a little bit. But
I don't know
go ahead.
I don't know if it's just me, because I mean, like I said before, I've been in those shoes.
We should do a poll. You should do a poll sometime after we're done kind of discussing or whatever, and I got all my questions answered. We should do a poll for your chatters and ask them what they think about it.
I don't know, because again, I know we kind of jumped right into it, which is fine. We'll go over some of it in a bit, but I want to definitely answer your questions before we dig into some of it. But I think when you have that, because again, the person who is in the suicidal mindset isn't going to make the most rational decision. They're not going to go, oh, I have paracord in the garage. Stepdad keeps paracord in the garage. They, whether this was something planned out, whether this was triggered by the phone calls with mom, we don't know. But for some reason, and the whole happiness, him being so happy, people who are suicidal will be happier in the days and weeks leading up to finally executing it. Whether, he didn't know maybe when he was going to do it, but maybe he had planned the thought out. Maybe he was wanting to do it. And so Maybe he was wanting to, do the trip with mom and the cruise and to have maybe the happy family moment so that they could have that memory before he took it out and before he ended it. So he was happy to be able to do that for them. Again, that's a thought. That's not that. That's just an interpretation of someone who is, again, a 12-year-old in that mindset. And as I described before, I've had two 12-year-olds I've worked with in the same time frame who have both been in my office back to back. One is probably the highest IQ I've ever seen in a child and was talking like an adult, where the other one was talking like a 10 to 12-year-old who had the mindset and thoughts of a 10 to 12-year-old. People are on different cognitive levels. Don't know his cognitive level. Don't know how cognitively developed he was. If he was taller as potentially he was, maybe he was a more cognitively developed 12-year-old. Maybe he was thinking like a teenager who may be more suicidal. There was a bullying incident months before, allegedly handled, but do you really want mom to come and stand up for your bullies at school? Because I know that doesn't always help. That makes shit worse.
And
so
the bullies were female, and it seemed like there was bullies, like there were multiple females.
Three girls or something, I think.
Three
like
females.
An incident with 3 girls. I don't remember what it was about, but you imagine how that looks to a 12-year-old. I'm being bullied by 3 girls. Do I really want mom to go defend me? How's that going to look to my peer group? And how's it going to look? I'm a tattletale. I'm a rat. I'm this. Again, all just things, all interpretations and observations from both personal experience, working with kids, working with teens, and from what information I have available. So again, some of this is based on what I have. Some of it, the ways that a 12-year-old could be thinking through this.
Well, I do a lot of work with military families, and now that you have mentioned that connection, both parents were military, both were officers, and I've seen a lot of self-harm come out of those families. Again, I'd really love to see a little bit more. I'd love to have like the family in the room and just sense the energy and all that stuff, but it could have been, there could have been some hidden stuff, like we don't want to look suspicious, so we're going to let everybody know that we're just the typical happy family living in a secure neighborhood, and we are completely fine. And Sean was a wonderfully adjusted, beautiful young boy, and everything was great. And I can understand that because there can be, you've been in the military, there can be serious problems if there's a counseling referral. Not especially for the dependents per se, but for the soldiers. It goes on your record. Your CO knows about it. It's a big thing. So you barely see the active duty people come into counseling offices, but you see the family members.
They're afraid of what happened. I tried to kill myself. I lost my clearance, was temporarily suspended for minimum of 30 days. They will not give it back to you. And one of the first things I wanted to do after I got through my initial crisis is I wanted to go back to work. I couldn't. I had to work in the chapel, which being an atheist of all places for me to work, I was working in the chapel, which was a great experience. I had great with the chaplains and the staff there. We all got along well. We had great conversations. We had really cool conversations. But one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to get back to my mission. I wanted to do my job. And to lose access to my job for at least a month, it could have been longer. I thankfully was cleared within 4 to 5 weeks. So I got back to work pretty quickly. But that didn't mean that, and one of the things when you have a TSSCI, when you have a top secret clearance, when you have access to sensitive compartmented information or SAPs, special access programs, when you have those levels of clearance, they look at like a dozen to 15, it's like 12 to 15 different areas of your life. Finances, mental health, former relationships, like when you get your clearance, like, and if one of those, like, if you fall behind on your mortgage or you fall behind on certain bills, they can find out about it. Or if you don't immediately report that, that can suspend your clearance until you either address it because it makes you a risk. So if you have a kid who's suicidal or dealing with mental issues and it's taking away from your work, or you need something like they look at like the whole person and they still want to make sure that you're not susceptible to disclosing secrets. When you have that high level access, which most of it's kind of boring shit, but there are things that do matter. You can't be vulnerable to bribery. You can't be vulnerable to, because if you got all the shit going on, I say, hey, I can give you a referral to one of the best places to take care of your kid who's dealing with suicide because the military is not doing it properly. You might be willing to do that so you can focus on the job or whatever. Again, just not, again, I'm not wanting to be like spinning wild theories out here. I'll say what things I know, in fact, and what things I don't. But I could see, like you're saying, military families, likely that the children in the family are going to have bigger issues than maybe visible on the surface.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it a lot working with TRICARE clients, and we've got 3 military bases around here where I live, and so I get quite a few military families and worked with them through the years. And yeah, there's usually one of them that is the family barometer that pipes up with something really self-harmy. If it's not doing the standard cutting, but they'll have an eating disorder, or they'll have some suicidality, they'll have a suicide attempt. And I see that happen. Now, it doesn't mean that was happening in this situation, but I can see how it could be hidden and maybe not so obvious.
Like
so
if you had to reflect on your clients that have been TRICARE, have been military clients, how many of them with having a youth did they walk in the door and you go, oh, on a 10 scale, 10 being, oh my God, this is the most critical crisis client I've had, and the 0 being, this is bread and butter, basic, I can have them in and out the door in 6 sessions kind of thing, right? On a 0 to 10 scale, they walk in the door, they're probably a lower number, but that first session or 2, you get that trust and rapport, they open up the floodgates, and now you're like, oh, there's some serious shit going on here.
Yeah.
How many of military clients have been like that you open those floodgates up, and you find a lot of more information going on in those kids?
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine that's pretty significant. You would have a lot of kids whose parents are, whether one or both parents are in the military.
One of the worst situations I've had in my not the office I'm in now, but the one I was in before renting space, was with a military family where the yelling and the screaming got so loud and so bad that we had to separate. It was a mother and a daughter. And we had to separate them, and it just ended up causing just a bunch of chaos in the office. And I can still remember that to that day. I mean, it was just so it was hard to be in the room with that much energy, for sure. And it was a military family. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of just family issues that go on with being in the military. You move around a lot. I mean, I know the family said that the kid was happy to be moving, that he was excited his mom was going to the Pentagon. But you have friends, you've been at a base for so many years, you have friendships. Just because it's 2022 and we have technology and you can FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, doesn't mean that losing that, in-person experience to be able to go hang out with a friend isn't a huge loss. So yeah, they might be okay with it. They might say they're okay with it, but can they really say they're not? Can a 12-year-old say, oh, I don't really want to move, Mom, when she's in, that lieutenant colonel position, coming right up on, because getting promoted to colonel is a big fucking deal. That's where you get put in charge of units and you get put in charge of big deal things. And it's where, if you want to make general, you got to start playing politics a lot more. And is it really a place where you as a kid, do you really want to be saying, no, Mom, I don't want to move. I like it here. Can we just stay here? Do we really have to move? Is that actually a possibility that your child can have in that situation? I don't think you could say that. It's actually what I would expect a kid to do, because they're just gonna, they're gonna hate it. But if they're already 12, I'm sure Mom's moved around more than one. Most positions you move around, whether Army, Air Force, every couple of years, usually 2 to 4 years, depending on your station. So he's probably moved at least once or twice.
Oh yeah, by that time for sure. So what is your take on the stepfather's clothing, and why, if a 12-year-old is going to be committing suicide, maybe had a plan, maybe didn't, and why would they put on dad's clothes and underwear and take off their own underwear and put it down in the bedroom? What do you think about that one?
As far as to where the other clothes went, I know that's up in the air and no one knows. Or allegedly, according to the family. As far as maybe the clothing got mixed in somewhere and they just haven't seen it, or it got stuff behind, stuff behind a dresser or something. I don't know. Again, the mind of someone who's in that situation. Maybe they find it in 6 months, when they move or whatever. I know they were moving or whatever. Or they were finishing up selling the house and they were renting it, so they were still. God, did my browser just freeze? Am I still okay? I'm still here. Good. Okay. I'm trying to log into my Ken's Facebook page so I can pull up this profile, so I don't dox myself by pulling up Facebook. So I have my Ken's Facebook. Yeah. So I'm trying not to fuck this one up.
Do you have to become a member of that group, or can anybody view it?
Anybody can view it, but to view the actual page, I think you have to be a member of. You have to be on Facebook. Like, I don't think you can just publicly, like, because let me try to do it in an incognito tab.
Yeah, I can try and do it too, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to share a screen.
I guess it does come up, but it has that stupid banner at the bottom. But hold on, let me see if I can scroll back.
What's it called?
I'll post the link in the chat.
Sean. Okay.
Yeah, it's literally facebook.com/what happened to Sean, all lowercase. It's in the main chat, and I'll post it in private chat too. But if the clothing could be a message, it could be his form of a note. Most people don't leave notes, which I know people have said, the kid didn't leave a note. Okay. I think it's like 70 or something % of people don't leave notes when they take their life. So notes are not the common thing, especially for youth. I think it's like only a quarter leave notes. We expect this drawn out note, why I did it. Some people take their lives on a whim, and that's really sad. But, the stepdad's clothing, if there was that, because we don't know, we don't have the outside, because one of the things that would be great would be having the perspective of a friend of the family that's willing to just be truthful and not just go, oh, the family's great, and say, here's the family's actual ups and downs, or someone in the family say, here's our actual ups and downs, because the family sounds too perfect. No family's perfect. We both know that. We've never ran into a family that is perfect.
But yeah, especially not a military family, I just have to say.
No. I've had families I had a family who, one of the parent, the one parent was a veterinarian, and they had more than one clinic in the area or something like that, and they were clearing 6-ish figures a year. They had like fancy boats and shit. Like they were like living it well, but they had plenty of family problems. Military, you have really good secure income, you have secure housing because of the job. It doesn't mean there's not issues. No family's perfect. I've yet to have a family walk in my door, even with little, quote unquote, little issues, and they not actually be way bigger things underneath. You always have something. Always have something. So if we're hiding it to, I'm not saying it's maliciously. I will never assume malicious intent. Grief will do a lot of things to a lot of people. And in fact, I thought a very thought-provoking comment someone made to the Pat Brown was, in one of the comments was, do you think people react worse to the suicide or homicide of a family member? I thought that was interesting. What do you think? Do you think people would be more, again, it's going to be case by case, but as a general, do you think people would be more surprised or upset or grief-stricken by suicide or homicide in a family?
Yeah, especially when it's 12 years old, though. I mean, there's this other case there. I'm blanking on her name, but she was found clutching a tree in Georgia, and it's really big. Debbie somebody. And they're saying it's suicide, but then there's these other things that are sort of suspicious around her and all that other stuff. So there's that going on. And it's so interesting when you say, what does it affect more? A family member getting killed or committing suicide? I think either way, it's a loss, right? And also maybe a senseless one, like a not necessary one. And so I think they have those things in common. I don't know if either one of them are going to be worse than the other, though. They're both in my opinion, fairly traumatic. What is your opinion?
I think someone pointed, and I would agree with the statement that the person in the comments, I don't have it readily available, but they said that, both are traumatic, obviously, and they're going to be depending on your relationship with the person, right? Whether you're close to that person or not. So if like you love your sibling, or maybe your relationship with your sibling, so it's like, oh shit, they died, but we didn't get along anyway, But I think especially for a parent, homicide is at least you can say, there's probably nothing I could have done because someone else pulled the trigger or did this. Whereas suicide, how did I miss it? Jordan Peterson, love him or hate him, gives a great example about how he had a patient who they had talked to, a family member called them like 5 minutes, 10 minutes before they killed themselves. And this patient of his was just busy. They were like, they couldn't really talk right now. So they just kind of blew him off, and the person ended up killing themselves, and they never forgave themselves because what if I just spent 10 more minutes on the phone with him? What if I had listened? And you just, because daily life, just, you're busy. You just, you don't think about it, And so they just, hey, I gotta go, whatever, click, And so you never forget that. The mom or stepdad or whoever, do you really ever forgive yourself for missing your kid was suicidal? That there was actually something. Do you ever forgive yourself versus someone? Because you can point the finger at someone and go, that person took my child's life, versus I wasn't able to help my kid. Why did my kid not want it? Because this is the thing I preach to families all the time and I preach to the kids specifically, is I don't care how much you love or hate your mom or your dad or your aunt or uncle, grandma, grandpa, whoever's taking care of you. I don't care how much it is. If you're ever in a position like that, they want to hear that you're not okay. And if they don't, I do. I don't care if I'm still your therapist or not. You call 911, you call me, you call someone to let them know you need help. Because, even if you had a fight with your mom and dad, they're mad at you, or you're grounded, they would rather than, like I've told people, I'd rather you wake me up at 3 a.m. and waste 3 hours of my night, and I go to work groggy the next day, but you're okay, than for the opposite to happen. And I've had friends wake me up at 3 a.m, and I've woken up friends at 3 a.m. to say, hey, I'm not okay. And it was something that was important. So if you was a mom or stepdad or whatever, focus on your career. Military is obviously a lot going on. I know as enlisted in the military, I had a lot going on. So as an adult, or as an officer, as an adult dealing with all the work, and she had I think there was 4 kids in the household. I think there was a sister, another brother, a middle brother, and then the youngest brother, and then Sean. Mm-hmm. So there's like 3 or 4 kids in the household. 2 military parents.
There was an autistic one. Not the youngest one was not autistic, but the second to youngest one was autistic. And,
okay.
And then there was Sean, and then Maria was, I believe, 14 or 16.
16.
Yeah.
So yeah, 15. So you're middle child too. So you have a middle child issue. You have another middle child with autism, so they're getting a lot of focus. Whether intended to or not, they're forced to have more focus. There's a lot of ways where the mental health of this child could have been missed. I'm not saying it was.
Yeah.
But to say that this kid has never had suicidal intent, never had was never depressed. I mean, I don't see it. I know way too many people. I've worked with way too many people. Had both friendships and work in professional relationships and clients. There's issues there. Whether mom doesn't want to admit to it or not, whether that's, again, a cultural thing from where she's from or not, right. There's a bunch of factors at play I do not think are being factored in. And that, to me, is what makes it really difficult to say. Because if it is a homicide, it's one of the most shittily done homicides. It doesn't make sense. If he was killed, because they think he was killed in the house and moved outside. Why would you risk moving a kid who's 12 years old, apparently maybe 5'10", even if we say 5'6", right? Try to move this heavy-ass kid outside, stage up a hanging when you could just stage the same hanging in a closet or on a doorknob or any bunch of other ways. Why go through all the effort? Why move him? Why change his clothes? Because you're going to put DNA on the clothes when you change them. Like, there's no fucking I figured out close to the perfect crimes, thinking about, like, if I were to pull up a homicide, how would I do it? I thought those through for fun thought experiments. To do it right, it takes a lot of prep and planning. Like, what would, like people are saying, it must be coming close to the family because there was a limited time window. Or with the gardener and they saw the family left. Like, why would the gardener or the people mowing the lawn just suddenly go in and people are like, maybe he was molested, maybe he was raped. Apparently there was no, like, because that's standard on any autopsy, especially for a minor. They're going to do a kit like that. If it came back, we would know about it. I'm guarantee you we would know about it. They would have said something about it.
What did you think about law enforcement's response to the family's Facebook posts and the way that they were able to refute a bunch of their concerns? I think as far as saying that they had done the best job that they could. And do you believe that it was defensive, or do you feel that it was appropriate? What are your thoughts about how the law enforcement reacted to the family's Facebook?
I know there was a lot of critique about the way that the I guess the tone was, and I think someone else in a response clarified it as that, the person, I think the guy who did the thing was a major or whatever. So, like, in the sheriff's office or whatever. So he's been doing it a while. I mean, it's kind of just, this is the information, this is what happened, this is what we say. They didn't think, I guess people said it was kind of insensitive or it wasn't like compassionate towards the family. But as an agency, I think they're under fire as to, like, hey, you're not investigating. You either A, don't answer because whatever, or B, I mean, there's no winning really for the sheriff's office. There's no winning because honestly, if a third party investigator comes in and it still determines it to be suicide, is mom really going to say, yeah, I agree with that? Or is she still going to be somewhat, is there ever a point where the ruling of suicide, no matter how many third party investigations come in, if the Virginia Bureau of Investigation comes in and says it's still a suicide, are they corrupt? And that's not to say that there's not corruption. I mean, I covered the Sophie Long case. There's definitely issues that went down in that case where the judge did things wrong. The guardian ad litem did things against the law that were verified against the law. Like, just as a sidetrack, right? There were things that were done that weren't to protocol. So is there ever a step where you get to, even if you brought in the Federal Bureau of Investigation to say, hey, we looked at it, we determined it was a suicide. When is it ever enough? Because is it still a suicide? Is it still a homicide after that? Because does it make it worse or better to do a third-party investigation? That's the question I would have. Does it make does it put them, if the mom's in grief and this is her inappropriate dealing with it, does it reinforce the grief to have another ruling of suicide come out? Does it make the thoughts in the incorrect assumptions worse to say, oh, we've had more investigations and they keep coming out as suicide? Does it make the situation worse or not? And again, I will be the first to go on record to say that police fuck up things all the time. I think that there's not enough, and like Pat Brown, the criminal profiler, said, there's no evidence of a second person being involved in it. There's only evidence of one person having anything to do with this incident, and it's Sean. And unless you were an expert at this, there's no defensive wounds. There's no marks of any kind of assault. There's nothing. There's no physical assault. There's no things to indicate that he was being forced against his will. Like, there's nothing. Because if he was being hung and you were going to hang him, and assuming not killed inside, taken outside, you're going to force him to hang himself. Would you not, at gunpoint, force him to hang himself where he couldn't stand up? So where he couldn't stop his own hanging. Right? And I mean, if you're going to be killed anyway, even at 12, would you not, if A, hang yourself, or B, get shot, do you still hang yourself? Like, maybe.
Yeah, you got me. I think when you started talking about the ways that the parents would handle grief or loss, okay, so do you think that if they have some concerns about the way things were processed through the sheriff's office, that the parents could be able to have them run, say, additional tests on the underwear or on the ropes or the hanging rope to see about DNA? Do you believe that would be part of their closure process, and that would be something that the sheriff's office could actually accommodate them? I don't know if it's the sheriff's office that would be doing that, but whoever does the analysis of processing the crime scene. What do you think about that? Just to be able to help them get their needs met, so that they can move on and accept whatever outcome is determined.
I mean, the sheriff's office in their video said that, we've been open to a conversation. We've been wanting them to come down and talk to us. They haven't. So there's that piece too. And
I forgot about that.
There's a couple reasons I could think for why that's the case. I can imagine, what is it? I just lost my train of thought. I could see where the grief resolution process is helpful, but I see where it sets a precedent that any future cases, now that it's the moment a family says reinvestigate, they've set the precedent where they have to, because a social media campaign can bully them into investigating, not because actual evidence came to light that said there's something else here that doesn't need investigating. Because if a social media campaign can bully every investigation to be reinvestigated, will you ever have a full? Because I don't believe, even if you had the Virginia Bureau of Investigation or some other agency come in and do a third-party investigation, any of these people covering it would come back and say, okay, they did say it was okay. You even have Pat Brown come in, who initially saying it's suicide, comes back, goes, does it, looks at all the evidence, looks at the autopsies, comes out, says it's suicide. People will go, you said it was suicide from the get-go. You were never going to say it was homicide. Where does it end? And do you make the person or the family worse at the end of the day? Because that's I'm looking at it from the therapist point of view, not the law enforcement necessarily. Because I can see where you fuck it up by doing it that way. And I would say I'm not against necessarily as a whole it being a second look at from another agency, but at this point it was in April, it's now October. The house stuff there's no way the house stuff's been preserved. Whatever's preserved is what you have. You have an autopsy that is consistent with a partial hanging, partial hanging, because it's not a full suspension hanging. You have, and I was able to zoom in from, the kid had, one of the news stations that did a news video on it, was like 2 minutes long, had put some documents up on the screen. I was able to freeze frame those documents and zoom in. Apparently the kid tested positive on his autopsy for COVID, but it wasn't stated, wasn't a factor in his death. So I don't know if that matters, but there's that. Maybe he was feeling awful. Maybe that contributed to other things. Maybe he was worried about, because think about this, if we go back and look at, because this is not, this stream's titled not just Sean, but youth suicide. If we look at the statistics of youth suicide and self-harm and eating disorders and all the things over the course of COVID-19, the lockdown, everyone doing shit through Zoom, I could see a 12-year-old who may now have COVID being kept away from their fears for 2 weeks. And maybe that was something that during the pandemic was one of the most awful things for them. I had clients who were legitimately in bad spots because they were taken away from all their friends and family. And because the school going virtual at the same time, they made mistakes that kept them from having access to electronics. Those two combining together just completely fucked them up socially. Like to where they made bad decisions that unfortunately would put them in a bad spot. And then thankfully therapy fixed a lot of that before I was fired. This is at my last job, the one from last year, where, the therapy addressed a lot of those issues, where we found the issue, the underlying cause was a lack of social relationships, the lack of positive, healthy social relationships. I could see a 12-year-old making those jumps, again, cognitive level unknown, making bad jumps of decisions to, I don't know if I'm going to be able to Because maybe they caught it before. Maybe they felt horrible. Maybe they were kept out of school for a week. Or whatever. They were told they could only go to school on for the rest of the quarter or semester online, or because the school policies were stupid. And some schools made dumb decisions like that. Like, oh, you go online, you're online the rest of the school year. Well, fuck. Like,
yeah, one of your chatters was talking about that too. 𝐂𝐨𝐳𝐵𝐻𝑍𝐽𝐴 a while back in the chat was talking about this is a psychiatric nurse apparently, and saying that forced learned helplessness during the pandemic was one of the reasons. And then I also chimed in on the social activities, school changes, but really I felt bad for the seniors. They missed their prom, they missed their graduations, they missed a lot of the stuff that makes senior year special for them too. And there were quite a few of those seniors that were really super depressed because of the pandemic being as restrictive as it was.
Right here, 𝐂𝐨𝐵𝐻𝑍𝐽𝐴 says, I can't seem to find the stats and reasons. I caught a lot of hell to start saying teen suicides will spike because of forced learned helplessness. Where'd it go? Hold on. I just had it. Forced learned helplessness started pandemic, lost a few friends, lost 13 old patients and friends to suicide. Total in 2 years was over 20. Well, in 2 decades in psych nursing, I think total suicide was about 20.
Yeah.
So in 2 decades, they lost 20 people, but in 2 years, because of the pandemic, they lost the same number of people. That's an insane number of people. That
it really did spike.
Huge spike. I don't like the number. That's just, I think I have a stat here pulled up from suicide from the, let me go to the table here. I'm trying to pull it up here on my side.
Yeah, and I agree about the long-term ramifications and manifesting all sorts of terrible interpersonal issues, behaviors. Some kids don't even really know how to hold a conversation, and it's really hard for them to break away from their phones. I see so many issues coming out of the pandemic that we're going to just have to work through in the coming years. And so we need good counselors out there. So if anybody in the chat is interested in becoming a counselor, this would be a great. Yeah, it's really not that. It's not that easy.
You need a master's degree, 2-year master's degree. It's pretty simple. And if you have a bachelor's, and you don't even need a bachelor's in psychology or bachelor's, because my bachelor's is in psychology and my master's is in social work. So I'm still a therapist. You don't, because you can practice therapy with like about 4 to 5 different types of master's degrees. It's anywhere. It's either generally it's a master's of social work, a master's of mental health counseling, master's of
marriage and family
therapy, master's of psychology. In some states will let you be a licensed professional counselor. And then there's like 1 or 2 other weird ones that I've run across that also do that. But those are your primary ones you run across.
Yeah.
2-year full-time program, 3-year part-time program will get you into a job that makes anywhere from 50 to 70 once you get independently licensed. So
net or gross, depending on how many people you want to see and how much, how many insurances you can contract with, if any, right?
Again, it depends on what you want to do. Some jobs pay a lot less. Like when I went from my private practice job to the job, the job working more residential, that was a pay cut of about half of earning potential because of what I was making per hour, roughly. Because my reimbursement at the private practice was about 35. And then my hourly, I was salary, but my quote unquote hourly rate, assuming 40 hours, was 17 bucks an hour, give or take. So it was about a half. It was a huge cut, but I ended up liking the work and I put in way more hours. So I basically made less per hour than that anyway. But it was the work that I liked. And, I'm looking at this new place now. This new job is going to be in the that I'm interviewing for. I'm really looking forward to it. It's community type counseling, but it's working with families doing, what the hell's the name of it? I don't know if you're familiar with it. Let me
wraparound services. Is it like a wraparound?
The recruiter sent me, or not the recruiter, but the clinical director sent me, like, do you know the name of this program? And I was like, no. And she said, look it up. Home builders. You ever heard of home builders?
No.
It's a program for working with families to help reinsure families who are going through like CPS, DCF. It's been shown with research to help improve the rates of kids staying in the home, working through things. It like addresses like, you work with like helping with childcare. It's like 2-hour sessions 2 to 3 times a week, and you work with like 3 to 5 families at a time, and it's over a period of like 6 weeks or so. So you're doing like 10 hours of therapy in home over the course of 6 to 10 hours of therapy, I think, a week with up to 5 families. It's pretty cool. I'll send you the link to it. The evidence. Have you ever heard of the California Evidence-Based Clearinghouse for child welfare stuff? That shows
I probably should have, but I don't. I'm not.
It shows you the whether programs and different things are evidence-based or not, and it shows you like it like rates on a scale of like how evidence-based it is, whether there's enough research backing it up, whether it's like gold standard level or not, or whether it still needs a little bit more research, but it's still good. It's a really cool resource to like look up things in practice methodologies. I'll send you the link. Let me see if I have it on my computer to send to you.
Awesome. Good, thank you.
So yeah, it's a different type of job. It'll be traveling about the community, but it's also to help keep families together who who probably are more likely lower side of the income spectrum, who don't always have access to resources, who go through CPS, go through DCF, who have issues, who the goal is to keep the families together. So I'm looking forward to the interview. Hopefully they'll like me. They seem somewhat interested in me. I'm still looking.
Oh, what's not to like, right?
Yeah.
What's not to like? You got your green screen. You got your tooth hanging out there. You got your.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great.
Great resume, and you could always put. They used to make these little. You remember chiclets? You could put a chiclet up there, and just kind of make it a makeshift tooth out of a chiclet.
No, that might hurt more than it would to just. Because thankfully, I'm on 90 milligrams of morphine a day to help me with my back pain. So, like when I was talking to the nurse on the phone, to the dental triage nurse, she's like, "Is it painful?" I'm like, "I take 90 milligrams of morphine a day." She's like, "That's a lot." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, "So it might be hurting. I don't know." It's because usually breakthrough pain. If I'm getting breakthrough pain on anything, it's not a good day.
Pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
I was at 120 before the VA mandated no more than 90. Wow. So yeah. They only give above 90 now to terminally ill people at the VA. So I'm maxed out, and somehow they allow me to have it with my young age, which I'm surprised they haven't tried to cut me off yet. So.
Yeah, well, so I guess different states have their different laws, but federal as well. So yeah, good luck with that interview. People are wishing you good luck in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah,
I appreciate that chat. Thank you also, Jason.
Yeah, what do you think about you said something about, I kind of got the vibe, now tell me if I'm wrong, that you are sort of annoyed at the YouTubers who are going all out on the conspiracy train on this and saying,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so tell me your thinking about that. What annoys you about the fact that people are sort of going out on this? We can speculate all the time in YouTube, right? That's kind of what true crime communities do. But what annoys you about this?
I will never call myself as part of the true crime or drama community, even though some of the Karens who went after me said, "You say you're not part of the drama community, but you're full of drama." Like, I'm not part of your shit. I watch their stuff to pay attention to what they do because sometimes it's interesting. Like, for example, when I explained to you how I could pull off the suicide in 30 seconds or less, you didn't, like, how would you strap your arms and do it? To me, it was automatically clear. To them, these people don't understand how you could do it. Like, they're like, that, they don't see how, there's like, no, how, your hands are tied. How are you going to put the rope around your neck and then bag? I'm like, well, to me, it's like, well, duh, you would do that first. Like, you could do that before you secure your arms, because the goal of securing your arms is just enough to keep you from reactively reaching, is the protective defense mechanism, because your body does that, and it's not uncommon for people who are killing themselves by hanging to do something like that, to restrain their hands, to prevent them from stopping themselves, because they want to go through with it. So with their, I think, I don't remember where I saw the numbers, but someone had shown some numbers or some information about that with hangings or partial hangings, people will do something to keep them from grabbing their throat so they can go through with it, And and I looked up the numbers on this. For youth suicide, hanging is the primary method of suicide. It's like, I'm pretty sure hanging is like 70% of all suicide methods for youth. Firearms is another, but that one's not as high. But the main one, it's like 70-something% is hanging. Whether partial or full hanging is the main method of suicide for youth. People are like, how would a 12-year-old, how would a kid know how to hang themselves? It's not hard. A quick Google search, watching TV ever, you know, talking to people in school, stuff you read, any history, like people, like even if you study history in school, you look up, like, you know, go to civil rights, go to lynching. People die by lynching by hanging people. Mm-hmm. So, I could die by hanging the same way. Like the logical, it's easy to find information. Like it's not hard to, even when you go to Google and you type in, how do I kill myself? Even though there's the first thing is how to get help, there's not hard to find information after that first search result for the suicide hotline on how to kill yourself. Like the information's available. So as morbid as it sounds, the information access is there. With phones and internet and Wikipedia and literally the entire knowledge of the world at our fingertips. We didn't have this 50 years ago, where you can literally go to Google and find or ask Jeeves or whatever your search, or Bing or whatever the fuck your search provider is. You can find the information you want in a matter of a few clicks. You know, whether he did it on his phone, whether someone in Discord, because apparently he played video games, and whether, you know, there was issue, because I know when I played video games when I was a kid, I was doing things on video games I probably shouldn't have been doing at that age, as a young teen, as a preteen, early teen. I can only imagine what's going on in Discord that kids are hanging out in these days.
Well, don't you think they would have looked into that? The investigators would have looked into his...
It depends if they had access.
Well,
if password protected.
Phone, Xbox, or I guess they had an iPad is where he played his games. Or no, that was what he was going to give to his little brother.
Even if he had
an Xbox.
I don't know if mom had if he had a phone or a tablet or whatever. If there's a password protection on it, without a warrant to Apple or like even Google, and even then, there's not always a guarantee they can get through. So unless it's like a national security thing where there are ways to actually get into password protected phones, because the encryption's that good, there are ways to bypass the boot. I'm a techie enough to know that there are ways to bypass like the bootloaders on like iPhones and certain iPhones to get into the protected system. The encryption level is strong enough to where it's not being broken without a supercomputer. So unless you have the password, or the data is unencrypted, or the encryption key is available on the server end, on the Apple or Google end, you're not getting into the information. And there's no one that's are they really gonna be able to get a warrant for Facebook or Google or Discord for what looks like a suicide in Virginia for a 12-year-old? Like, it's not national security. It's not, you know, a terrorist plot. It's not, you know, I'm gonna drive through a parade of people or whatever, like in 𝐒𝐻𝐻. Like, you know, it's not like there's enough stuff there to go, there's some imminent harm. And after the fact, maybe we don't have access. Or maybe there's nothing there. If we assume nothing's there. But if it's locked down at all, there's no getting into it. If I encrypt my hard drive, no one's getting into it unless they have the key. If I do it right, no one's getting into it. If my encryption key is long enough and I do the right algorithm. Most modern password for like all your companies and shit, like Facebook, all your services, use really strong encryption algorithms to protect their user data, which in turn means unless you have the information, you have the lock. Unless you have the right key, you're not getting in. So that data is probably forever lost to time, unless someone in a Discord or someone in a group of his shares it and says, hey, I have, you know, here's our public chat rooms we had in Discord. Here's the screenshots. Unless a friend or someone had access to that. But if it's private DMs between him and maybe kids bullying him or people doing shit, you're not really getting those. Some other party would have to provide them. You wouldn't get in through his account, right?
Yeah, it would be interesting to know if the parents had parental protections on, or if they had any knowledge of passwords, or if they had any kind of... You would think they would, right? Here we go back to the military parents again.
My parents didn't have my passwords.
Well, were your parents military?
No, but my parents were also oblivious to what I was doing online. If I went back and told them all the shit I was doing online, one, they would have been scared I'd never had anything horrible happen to me. Two, the amount of creepy people that ended up talking to me during my youth, because this was back in the day when Yahoo chat rooms were still around, which were full of pedophiles.
Those were fun though. I have
yeah,
to say,
Yahoo chat rooms were the shit
AOL
before they became the bastion of pedophilia and
exactly.
of trying to find kids and shit. Like before the days of Chris Hansen and shit. Like outing everybody and people trying to get like, yeah, there were cool days back in the day, but now it's thankfully it's no longer there for that.
AOL 1993. Those were the days. 1993 AOL.
When you get home from school, make sure you message me on AIM, guys. Remember AIM? AOL Instant Messaging. That was the shit, guys. I remember that. IRC chat and ITQ, like
what was that? Our Player, and there's a bunch of them that we used to use. And then we got to, when we finally got to use our voices to talk to each other instead of just like typing everything out, that was like the thing, right? M Player, that's what it was called, M Player. But I digress. So, okay, so Twisted made a great point. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I never really got to your answer about the clothes.
Yeah, please do.
I wasn't trying to avoid that.
Please don't avoid clothes, okay? You've got a job interview tomorrow.
Yeah, well, like I told my wife, she's like, "Is it in person? Is your interview in person or is it digital?" I was like, "It's through Zoom." So I was like, "I only just gotta look presentable from the waist up." Listen, if you didn't during the pandemic do therapy via Zoom with pajama pants on and a polo or your dress shirt and whatever, if you didn't do that, you did something wrong. Because I guarantee you, everyone did that. Because everyone at meeting, like, you're wearing your comfy pants. You don't have to wear your fucking dress pants. You don't have to wear your fancy shit. Waist up that camera, you turn it up before you stand the fuck up. That's it. Like, wear my nice comfy pajama pants, fuck it. Because I don't have to. Because I'm sitting in a chair for an hour talking to someone, and then I click off, go get a drink, come back, and then I resume. No one knows. Yeah, see? I did that.
Well, yeah, yoga pants, I guess. I could have worn my husband's South Park pajama bottoms. Those would have been kind of cool to wear during the pandemic, just because, you know, if I just happen to get up, then they could see there's South Park jammies. But I don't
did at first wear like my khakis and shit, but after like months, I'm like, fuck this. I don't care.
No, don't do that. Yeah.
I'm like, fuck this. I'm done with this. This is too much. Like, I'm tired of this fucking online. I hate online therapy. It's as beneficial as it can be. I hate it. Because there's just like, if you stutter, is it someone pausing because they're actually pausing, or is it fucking screen messing up? Like when you sit there earlier, when you were like closing your eyes trying to picture what I was saying, I thought your screen froze for a minute. So I'm like, is she actually breathing, or is it she's waiting to picture what I'm saying? So
yeah, no, it's I'm hardwired because of that whole thing, the whole wireless thing. Wireless and wireless, they don't get along real well when it's therapy, because then the client is in the middle of telling you something really super important, and then it's
like, fuck, that was really important.
So I just learned to just kind of like stare up at the sky and think, well, they'll be back, and then I'll have to tell them, well, you're gonna need to repeat that because I didn't catch it. But
I always felt really bad about that.
Well, tell me about the stepdad's clothes then. So what do you think that's all about?
Again, nothing to support it at this point, right? Because again, I think the lack of information about bio dad is again, the absence of evidence is evidence of itself. Like the absence of any issues with this kid ever, besides one incident of bullying like 6 months ago, like the absence of this kid never dealing with any emotional issues in puberty years. Like I'm assuming like you're talking like he's now at the Tanner stage 2-3 era of puberty. So he's like full on, the hormones are probably raging shit. Like guarantee you by age 12, probably hitting, especially if he's that tall, if he is 5'10", right? Or whatever, like someone said. Again, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure someone said he was 5'10". I'll have to verify. I'll try to verify that. I don't know if there's family photos that can verify that or something. But if he's that tall, or if he's taller, then he's definitely going through puberty. So that comes with its own emotional issues. We both have seen clients dealing with puberty in not always the best ways, you know. But the lack of information about dad, the lack of information about a 12-year-old never having really major issues besides a one incident of bullying, because never having issues ever would look just as bad as one incident of bullying, in my opinion. There's underlying things going on. There's got to be some sort of issue that is, for whatever reason, not being brought about. My theory is, that there's guilt because we didn't catch the fact that our kid was wanting to end their life. Because there's a lot of times where there's no sign. I mean, like 25% of the time or more, there's no sign that the person was going to kill themselves. There's no outward sign. There's no cry for help. There's nothing. Sometimes it's that way. And as much as, we hope and try to get people to be open and honest, sometimes, especially kids, don't always share. That's one of my biggest things. Is one of the first lessons I try to teach is you've got to ask for help. You got to reach out. I'm never here to shame you for that. I'm never here to get upset with you. If we take the rest of the day to work on whatever is going on, that's fine. But because you were making sure you're safe, mom or dad's going to want to make sure you're safe. Grandma or grandpa's want to make sure you're safe. So that's why I try to instill that lesson first off. And I've seen it be successful. Where, because they've learned that lesson, it's kept them alive. It's kept them okay. They haven't put themselves in a bad position. Whether it's self-harm or whether it's engaging activities that are concerning, they felt comfortable talking with the parents, and because they could, even if it was something, maybe a dumb decision, instead of the parents berating them, they go, well, let's figure out why this is a good decision or not. And, it's not just immediately screaming out the kid. And so I don't know if Sean had that relationship with his parents.
Yeah.
I have no idea. That seems like the culture of mom versus middle America, not middle America, quote unquote, like Virginia, East Coast, Virginia, whatever, growing up, the different cultural issues. I know I've ran into cultural issues with openness and accepting mental illness and shit like that. Maybe that is a part of the mental block from mom's grief, is admitting that now that there's no undoing what just happened. There's no undoing this. That I would push, because it was weak to, is one example. It's weak to have these feelings, or, these feelings mean that there's something wrong with you, or that I'm a bad parent, because we ignore these. Before, we can push these off to the side and go, oh, it's not a big deal. Toughen up, be a man, be, whatever. And those types of feelings can, in other cases, normally just you deal with them and you get long-term therapy as an adult to deal with the way your childhood was. This is a situation where it doesn't work that way. You don't have the opportunity to, as a 20-year-old, to go bitch at a therapist about how mom told you to be a man all the time, because you're no longer here to do that. Because the cultural sensitivity for the kid in America versus mom's upbringing in Latvia, I don't know the culture of that. I imagine it's a bit different, because mom seems to be a bit older. I heard her do an interview on a podcast about the case. Listening to her speak was interesting. So,
you mean the words that she said, or the vocal tone? What was
just
interesting
listening
about
to her talk about it? There is, it seems to me, an emotional investment in this being a murder for her, right? Because I think if it's not, then it truly means to her, she feels like she made a mistake, maybe. I don't know if that's just me, but that's the way. Does any parent really ever want to admit that they've made the mistake where they missed their kid's suicidal ideation?
Right.
Or their
Well,
depression?
that would interfere, though, too, with the family narrative that everything's fine and we've got this under control. And so, again, Sean could have been the family barometer and been like, no, things are definitely not fine, and that this is going to kind of bring that out there. It's kind of a fatal way to do that, but that's it. And then the film, admitting that there's a suicide, would interfere with the family narrative that everything is okay in the family. So a couple of good reasons for maybe the family having some unprocessed grief and loss issues, and maybe not wanting to. But I do think that if they had specific concerns that they wanted the police to address or the processors to address, then they could have gone down there and said, well, whatever happened with the underwear processing, whatever happened with I guess there was a bloody or some sort of fingerprint.
It was a large handprint that I guess the mom said was larger than her hand. And I guess from what the information's available is, they came and grabbed the handprint, and it didn't match anything in any database. So it's not like it triggered on any national criminal database, which is good. So that means it's not like there was some known criminal in the area, because it could have been, I mean, I don't remember exactly where the handprint was, but I mean, it could have been literally anybody, a delivery driver. It could have been, and I don't remember if it said it was on the inside or the outside of the door.
It was the inside of the door. Yeah, that's what they said. It was the inside of the door.
Could have been a bunch of things. If there was EMTs or anyone in and out during that day. If there was police in or out, they may have, I know I've done that before. I've pushed on, maybe when I was younger and less respectful, I pushed on the glass to open a door versus pushing on the metal part of the door. So I would leave a handprint,
Well, you haven't actually completely convinced me that it could be suicide. I mean, I'm still on the fence, right?
Like the clothes could be a message about the least sidetracking, fucking segue ever. The clothes being the kid maybe having an issue with the stepdad.
Yeah.
Whether or not publicly you look great with mom and stepdad. If there's, I know my personal issues with my stepdad. My stepdad would sometimes talk down about my dad. My dad wasn't always the best dad. It's not like he didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't like he beat me. Financially insecure. So, I mean, taking care of me was a bit harder, especially when to live with him. But, I didn't like the way that was treated, like the way that was done. And so it doesn't sound like there's any sexual abuse or any kind of things like that. But anything other than that, whether the kid felt, I don't know how long mom and stepdad had been married, how long the relationship, how long kid was in this household like that. I'm assuming probably several years, considering I would guess the two younger siblings might be the new dad. So I think the other kid was what, 6 or something, the autistic kid.
Yeah.
So, new home, maybe limited access to dad, assuming dad's still alive, I think. Because it doesn't say dad's dead. I don't think dad's dead. The biological dad's dead. I don't even think he's mentioned in the obituary or whatever about the biological dad. I don't think he's mentioned at all.
Look at the Facebook group. It's just pretty much the mother's postings and some pictures of Sean. And he looks very tiny. I'm not sure that
maybe he's not.
Gosh, looks like he's got a Pittsburgh Steelers bow tie on here. That is interesting.
I'll give him credit for that. I love the Steelers. So.
Well, he was going to be moving to the Pentagon, so I guess he's going to have to start, sporting that kind of stuff. But
where's
who knows?
My Facebook tab at?
Yeah, it's very interesting. But no, I see a picture of the handprint, and I see a picture of the bike helmet cover, which had this string that he was supposedly hung on.
I know that there's the chair controversy, that the chair is not anywhere near that, but the police say that was moved when first responders showed up to administer first aid and CPR. I think one of the things that sucks is that because they had to remove the belt around the kid's waist to administer shocks, that you don't know the actual tightness of the belt, whether it was as tight, because again, if he had been there for a long enough time to where there's issues with onset of the body becoming more rigid and not easy to move the limbs now that he's dead, and that the blood started pooling and the body's becoming more rigid, makes it harder to do anything. So maybe it was difficult to remove his arms, but that doesn't mean that the belt was on so tight that it had to have been done by an outside person. Is the way I would do that.
Well, apparently they were able to get a heartbeat out of him after her sister did CPR and chest compressions, and then they were able to get a faint heartbeat. So he was like sort of coming in and out of life.
I mean, I would want to see that, because I know that from what I heard from one of the podcasts that I listened to, that they had given mom a strip of his like final EKG or whatever. I've never heard of that being done too. That sounds weird. I've never heard of like the last bit of a EKG strip being given to the parent. Yeah. Like the memento. Maybe that's something local or, but I don't know if I would want that, because that seems kind of weird. I think,
I don't know. I had a client once who tattooed on her arm her EKG, her heartbeat, when it was the lowest. Like she had bradycardia because she had an eating disorder. And so she tattooed her EKG onto her arm to remind her how close to death that she had gotten. And that was supposedly her inspiration for not getting back into her eating disorder. So I don't know. I don't know about that whole like official thing. Why would they give the parents the audio?
I don't know why they would give them the strip of the EKG. That I thought, you think that might be evidence, potentially, but this is the swing set, and he was hanging around where the swings are up. They had moved the swings all the way to get him down or whatever. Actually, can I zoom in further on that?
I'm just trying to see if they mention how tall he is, but this whole thing is a narrative.
This swing set's not that big. You can just tell by this chair that this swing set is not that high. This is maybe 5 foot high, like maybe 5. I'm like 6'1", so like I could stand and probably my head would be
over
equal
the top of the pool.
To the crossbar. So if he's like, say 5 footish, give or take, that this chair is just enough this chair is the perfect height to get up there to tie the thing, and then it would make sense for him to be suspended mostly close to the ground.
And I don't know. Do you think it looks flimsy? It does look like it's made out of wood, so it could be a little bit more solid.
It looks like it's wooden, like the crossbar is like a 4x4. Like this here is like a 4x4 piece of wood, and I think these are 4x4 pieces of timber. Like, because these over here on this, these all look like 4x4 pieces of wood, except these cross braces, which are like 2x4s or 1x3. So it's decently sturdy lumber. I mean, again, it's holding, because you got 1, 2, 3 swings here generally. So it's meant to hold, say, 50-pound kids swinging back and forth. 50 to 80-pound kids maybe swinging back and forth. So it would make sense to be able to hold his weight. I mean, I'm right. What was I at my last doctor's appointment? I was like 198. I could do a partial hanging off of this and it would hold my weight. I could probably stand on the middle of the crossbar and it would hold my weight just fine. It's not like so flimsy that it would just collapse. So, I mean, again, I don't see that this here being, because people are like, well, if the chair's over there, how do you hang it? Well, one, does not look that high.
Well, they moved the chair. They had to move the chair out of the way.
Yeah, the chair was definitely moved.
Yeah, because of the they had to get him down and all that other stuff. So they moved it. The chair, I believe, was underneath him.
The EMTs, police say that the chair was underneath of him, and that they had to move it to do because the sister had lowered him to the ground and started performing CPR. And the sister said that the string from the bag, the string that was used, it was like a nylon cord, like if you ever had a drawstring bag, like those little cheap ones, like they have. He was 12 years old, twisted, for those who are catching on, or just jumping in. But one of those nylon cords from one of those types of drawstring bags was what was used, and that's plenty strong enough to do a partial hanging with, where it doesn't have to hold his full weight. Even me, again, you just need enough pressure on the neck to cut off the blood supply, cut off the air supply until you faint, and then your weight does the rest. It doesn't take much. All you gotta do is place it underneath your neck, and because the sister said it was like angled up like under his chin, sort of, which would be fine because it's also pressing on your carotid. If you're having pressure on both sides of the carotid, then you're gonna cause loss of consciousness and then eventually death.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it doesn't take much. As sad as it sounds, it doesn't take much. As sad as it sounds. But
yeah, I guess it's just because the family narrative has just been so, happy, upbeat. It's hard to believe that it was a suicide for a lot of people. I was just looking at some of the posts in the Facebook group, and I'm very happy to say that we have touched on every concern that they had in the Facebook group as far as like, I don't think that this was a suicide. But you have pretty much provided a logical explanation to each of their concerns.
I know there's the barefoot thing that keeps coming up. Like,
why we didn't talk about that.
His feet were clean, but I mean, this is a black and white photo, which, or it's a sepia tone photo or whatever, which kind of, let me see if there's a better one because I don't like this. But assuming because the family's like, the yard was muddy and swampy, but police and first responders said that wasn't the case. But I mean, even if the grass, like I've walked across the grass myself before, like barefoot, and even with my yard having like patches of dirt and stuff, I can walk across the grass and still come up with clean feet. Even if it's Florida, so it fucking rains here. It don't, even when the grass is wet, it doesn't mean my feet are going to be muddy. Even where the patches of grass are, where it's, and someone pointed this out and wanted a comment somewhere, even if it was muddy and he walked across wet grass, the wet grass will clean his feet. Like, there is logical explanations to pretty much every point along the way that explain some of the concerns.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest things that stand out are there's no evidence to point to a second person. There's no DNA. There's no defensive wound. There's no even wounds of like being hit. There's, for a murder, why would you stage it outside if it was committed inside? Mm-hmm. None of it adds up rationally. Even if we do my first murder, my baby's first murder, kit at Walmart, and you try to do it and you screw it up, why would you go through all the extra effort? You're worried about being caught. You again, none of this is true because there's no proof of any sexual assault against the kid. There's no proof of any physical assault against the kid. Even if we take he was sexually assaulted, and then they were trying to get rid of the DNA, so they got rid of they changed the clothes into the stepdads to get rid of their DNA. That's why we can't find the clothes. And then they wanted to, hang him up so it looked like where you wouldn't think you would get caught in all of that time.
Mm-hmm.
It's adding so much time to the process, because if you're either A, doing it to a dead body, or B, you're making the kid change, it's a gunpoint. I'm assuming it's not going to be automatically following instructions, doing it super fast. The kid's going to be delayed. Now, if it's the kid doing it on his own terms, the kid could be changing in and out of clothes in a couple minutes. I'm assuming trying to force a kid to change, it's going to take several minutes. Forcing, assuming he's not dead, assuming he is dead, trying to change a dead body is going to take time, because you now have, weight, limp weight. It's not like it's being supported by anything. You have all this weight now. And if he was dead prior to that, before changing, if he was killed before his clothes were changed, wouldn't there be loss of, urine or stool in the kid's underwear?
Yeah, good point.
You would have losses. You would not have anything to hold back the sphincter muscle, because now you're dead. Would there not be urine or stool in the underwear beyond normal, like kids suck at wiping? They clean themselves. Like, they're again, yeah, right. That's funny.
They're just not that specific, Ken. They're just not that specific.
Well, I'm just saying, those are things I think people, if he was killed prior to the changing of clothes, that would be something consistent. That underwear would have evidence to show that he lost bowel and bladder function.
Yeah. We know the difference between skid marks and
lots of full, yeah,
the Godfather, of just completely letting go and doing your business.
Yeah, there's just no. Yeah. So Papa Twisted said he also used a chair with a cushion. He was standing on that, could have wiped his feet off.
And she's making a lot of really good points. She said earlier about the instructions for hanging being available on the internet.
Yeah,
it made me think about
there's a song. There's a song to make a noose.
Yeah.
There's a song about making a noose. It's, I think, a bit more racy, but I think there is the song out there. Like, and CK is talking about, having a teen patient tie a shoestring around their throat so tight that I couldn't keep her airway open. It took a long time to find the knife because it was a high security unit. She almost died. You don't need a fancy setup to pull this off. You don't need full support of the weight. You just need enough restriction of blood and oxygen supply to cause unconsciousness and then death. Unconsciousness comes quick. Death takes a couple more minutes. But once you're unconscious, you're not undoing it. So securing the arm to the side is just enough time till I go out and go unconscious. Because if you do it right, that's probably a very painless death. You can, blood choke yourself basically to unconsciousness, and then your body weight finishes it off. You're not feeling any pain. It's probably a quick way to go.
Well, if Tim were here, Lost Bullet, he would talk about autoerotic asphyxiation and how that's sort of along those same lines, right?
People have made the theory, but it would make more sense if it was autoerotic asphyxiation. It would be done more in a bedroom than an outside environment.
Yeah.
Now, the changing into the stepdad's clothes, if there was a sexual component to it, was there any, semen found in the clothing or on the clothing? Again, same thing with his underwear. Was there anything found on his underwear to assume, sexual activity or self-sexual stimulation prior to engaging in the fatal act? Like, that's where maybe I'm just hyper aware of all the things that are going into things like this. But one of the things I think that it's pushing people, like if I go to the comment section of someone's video here, like one of these YouTubers, for example, this is from someone saying, the homework being done is proof enough to me, a mom of a tween, that it wasn't suicide. What an awful tragedy, rest in peace. That's not immediate evidence that it's not a suicide. Like that's an emotional answer. It's not a logical answer. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, that's where a lot of these jumps are being made that, to me, people, because no one wants to think a 12-year-old wants to kill himself.
Well, the jumps are, okay, there's clothes that he had on that are missing. There are the clothes that he was wearing that weren't his clothes. There was his underwear not being where it should be, but and in their bedroom, there was the things that were kind of out of place. The missing glasses lens also, glasses were on the ground, a lens was missing. That is true. There was a bag with different colors and the belt was really tight. So I think that's why these little snail antennas are going up in the true crime community. Again, I'm not completely annoyed with it, but I am just sort of thinking, wow, yeah, that does sort of make sense that there could be a different story, but it also could be still a suicide as well. So
I think that's why it makes a lot of sense to me that there's enough here. Both. I think you could make, there's enough of little pieces on their own, maybe, but when the totality of the circumstance comes together, I don't think there's enough to justify it as being a murder. Like, hold on.
And what do you think about what Twisted is saying about 12-year-olds are just discovering?
I disagree. You would be amazed at what 12. I've worked with kids. And kids know a lot more about things than they'll let on to. It doesn't. All you gotta do is have an older kid in school say, dude, if you put a belt around your neck while you're masturbating, you get this really great high and it feels amazing. And that's all it takes for someone to hear that once and go, oh, let me try that. Hear it on the school bus, hear it, standing at the bus stop, hear it from some older kids while they're playing outside or playing at the park. It don't take much to hear some of these things, and then people try them as part of their sexual discovery and exploration during their preteens and teens.
I mean, people are doing this cinnamon challenge with, and you just like put a bunch of cinnamon in your mouth and I don't know what it's supposed to do, choke you or something. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, it's just the cinnamon challenge is funny. It's the cinnamon dragon. It's the cinnamon dragon.
I hope nobody's died from it. It just doesn't look real comfortable. Like you'd probably cough a lot and it wouldn't be pretty.
I'm going to read you something from a comment on a person's YouTube comment. Let me know what you think about this and let me know how you feel about what they're saying.
Okay.
This person says, this little boy was such an empath, there is no way that he would hurt himself in front of his 2-year-old brother or while he was responsible for him. There's no way. It's not his personality. If he was going to hurt himself, he would have done it when his baby brother wasn't around. Something sinister happened to this precious boy, and I'm so angry for this family. How do you interpret that comment?
Well, I don't know if it's a family member or anybody.
It's just someone on YouTube.
Knew. Yeah, they're not dealing with facts. They're just dealing with their emotions, and maybe they feel like he was an empath, but how did they know if they didn't know him? And they keep saying the word precious, which as a judgment. Again, what I think about it is I think they're obviously, they see the cute little picture with the bow tie and they're just thinking he's adorable. He's an adorable little kid. And I have to say that I agree that he looks very adorable.
He's definitely, it's a horrible loss. I will be the first to say that. It's a horrible loss.
But it's a bit of a stretch for somebody who doesn't know another person to say that they're an empath. It's even hard for a person who's in a counseling relationship with somebody else to say that they're an empath unless you've gotten to know them over session, session, and you're thinking, oh yeah, this is a person who senses and feels things really, really super intensely. And
so we have missed another fact point, I think a little bit, is so someone in the again, I'm reading through a certain YouTuber's comments. I'm not going to say their name because I just don't want them to, I don't like them for certain things. But they've covered this case. They said a commenter said, the fact that the 2-year-old said to his mama that Sean's friend came over and was hitting him is enough for me right there. Babies don't know how to lie. I'm going to disagree with that to a certain degree. Is because it's, again, if we assume either 24-month-old or 35-month-old, right? So close to between 2 and 3 years old. Cognitive development level. Do 2 and 3-year-olds know how to lie? 2 to 3-year-olds know how to lie? Not necessarily. But I have literally sitting here in my office next to me one of my books from cognitive psychology in my undergrad, I think it was. And there's because I pulled it up to cite something about the 𝐓𝐰𝐢𝐿 case a couple months ago about kids lying. And it shows that it's very easy for kids that are under 5 to have information skew their recollection of information, right? So a friend hitting Sean could have been skewed by any outside, again, assuming that the kid said this, taking the family at face value, assuming the kid said that, it could have been skewed by anything on television, interaction, something like that. And if there was someone hitting Sean, would there not be marks, especially right next to death? Prior to death, would there not, like within 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes prior to death, would we not have any sort of wounds on the child? So yes, the 2-year-old said that someone was hitting Sean, that a friend of Sean was hitting Sean or whatever. But there's no evidence to back, there's no forensic evidence to back it up. You have the statement of a 2-year-old who, again, assuming it's true, is 2 to 3 years old, effectively.
Well, if he was being punched, why wasn't there any, I guess there wasn't any bruising or any marks on any other parts of his body except for the area with which he was, the rope was around his neck.
That's the only evidence that was basically found, according to both the police and the document that was available from the snippet from the news piece and from all the information that's out there. I guess his little brother said a friend was chasing Sean around and punching him and the man touched his arm. If we both know kids love, part of the cognitive development is imagination and imaginative play, imaginative thought. So that could be, and I'm sure everyone's has interacted with a young child who will just go off on a long train of thought that is the funniest shit you've ever heard. And they'll just start talking about something and add on to it and add on to it and add on to it. Because it's how their brain's starting to put the building blocks together and how it's starting to do their language development and how their processing is doing. So,
well, yeah, and I want to be respectful to the parents, but there's also the possibility that they could have asked the kid, was anybody else in the house? Was there a man in there? And then it makes it easier for the kid to agree or disagree about that. And so, but I do, again, want to be respectful to the parents and not say they were trying to plant ideas into this kid, but
it's very easy to prime information.
Yeah,
if you don't know what you're doing, you can, like, legitimately, when you deal with, like, we both know this from, I'm sure, being in the field, but anytime you deal with cases of abuse, the questioning process has to be done, especially sexual abuse. You have to be done so carefully, so you don't put in the ideas or the thoughts into the mind of the child. Or even if they're older kids, not like 4 or 5, even if they're like 5 or 7, 10, 12, you still have to do things so carefully. So you're not inserting your opinion and going, well, did he rape you? Did she touch you? You know?
Exactly.
You can't ask questions like that because
say, what happened? What did you notice? All that stuff, right?
Yeah, you ask like very, very generic but specific questions, right? That you're trying to elicit further information, and then you let them build on it. Like they say, like, you know, what happened? Well, this. Well, can you tell me more? What about this? And let them explain it without putting any ideas. And it's very careful wording. It's very specific wording.
Yeah.
And that can throw cases out. That gets cases thrown out because of people doing interviewing wrong. Because if you interview it wrong, then you can fuck up the testimony
tainting the evidence. I hate that I just said taint, but I just did. So then I just said it again.
Flip it.
I just said it again. Alyssa.
Flip that, Alyssa.
Are we going to do a poll to see what people in the chat think about, now that we've I don't know that there's anything else that is needed in here. You've pretty much, except for that last thing, the 2-year-old statement.
I think the 2-year-old statement also, there's so much, again, even assuming that the statement happened and assuming it wasn't primed, assuming it wasn't part of the questioning, there's a half a dozen explanations that make sense for it. It could have been something that happened a couple of weeks ago when Sean's friends were playing with him or hanging out, and, you know, and because time works differently for a 2-year-old, you know, doesn't mean it happened today. Like, if you ask a kid, did that happen today? Are they going to really understand that? Is a 2-year-old going to understand, did that happen 2 hours ago? Did that happen just this afternoon? Do the 2-year-old understand the concept of time, understand the concept of difference? There's just so much.
Point. They can't understand that mom is also somebody's sister, and it could be my sister is my aunt. They can't understand that. Or maybe they can. I know Twisted was saying my nephew knew how to lie at age 2 before he could even talk effectively. Well, you know, and that's, gosh, yeah, that might be one of those outliers, right? That isn't typical at age 2, but because they're barely verbal at age 2, right?
I mean, you can be somewhat verbal with it. Again, even if I go like 20 or 35 months, so like right before the 3rd birthday, if we give it the best possibility of being true, right? Even with that level of verbal interaction, assuming you picked up verbal communication at a younger age, the cognitive development level just, I think, is not there to be able to say definitively that a 2-year-old or 3-year-old understood the timeline of events, that saw that happen in that moment, in that day. There's way too much that could be factored in. If Sean ever chased around or was roughhousing with friends, ever, and the kid remembers that, could be confused for that. Maybe him and the kid were playing like that before. And like, there's just, and that's not to make assumptions and to jump to conclusions. It's the understanding of the thought process and the way the brain interprets information in young children. So what the 2-year-old saying isn't necessarily the exact thing that happened when they say it happened, because the brain of a 2 to 3-year-old doesn't work the same way. So that's the way I see it.
Yeah,
And
and we have a
maybe
couple
I'm
people.
biased. I don't
Well,
know
a
if
couple
I'm
people
biased.
in chat are saying that, yeah, you can talk it to, you can lie, and even be speech delayed it to and lie. So, yeah, I don't know
I don't
how
think it's
a whole
past
lot of
lying.
2-year-olds
I mean, lying could be just,
making
I
up
guess,
stories or just
yeah, because
pretending.
these,
You know, it could be
yeah,
whatever, right?
pretend is healthy in young children.
Mm-hmm.
It's very healthy. Like I'm seeing comments here, because the family's in the parents are in the military, is it a vendetta against them? People have said it was staged. The kid was staged like the stepdad in '_𝐓𝐻𝐸. Um,
Yeah, I
like there's
that
just
too.
like that's where, and then I was watching. This is what pissed me off initially. So I was watching someone's live stream on it, and they were talking about the motorcycle bag. If anyone's familiar with motorcycle helmet bags, they're usually nylon bags. They're breathable material because your motorcycle helmet can get wet and needs to dry. You don't want it to get moldy, and you don't want your sweat and shit to get. So it's like a breathable-ish nylon bag. It's not necessarily meant to suffocate you. One of the YouTubers, AP mentioned it earlier, 𝗶𝗞𝗀𝗽𝗀𝐽. I was watching her initial stream covering this. She's suddenly in the middle of her thing, just says, there was a plastic bag on the kid's head. Whether she said it on purpose or just went from motorcycle bag to plastic bag, just changed the facts of the case in that moment. Yeah. So it goes from a motorcycle bag to a plastic bag, and just changing facts. And then I was in another chat of hers, arguing with her, saying I wasn't able to go up and actually talk to her because it was late at night and I was ready for bed. And I was saying that there's no way the facts of this case add up to it being homicide. And I was trying to give some of my reasons. She's like, there's just no way. I completely disagree with you. And I'm sitting here like, I really wish I could have gone up and just argued the point with her to say.
I mean, I'm not pushing back too hard. I am just asking the questions that everybody else is asking, and I'm not. I'm not completely convinced that it's either one, but I would love to have more evidence. And if what you say is true, that the parents were invited by law enforcement to come down and ask about concerns, or if they wanted additional tests done and they refused to do that, or they hadn't done it, but instead they opened their Facebook group and started talking publicly about it, then yeah, I kind of think that's a slap. If that's true, that's a slap in the face of law enforcement, and we should be dealing with the people who have, for instance, my son's underwear and are processing it or have the evidence, right? We should be dealing with them. Why they want to make it this public, I'm not sure. Like I said, it's almost the exact opposite of the Chris Watts case, where the family really wanted to keep it kind of private, and then it just blew up into this big wildfire. So
now, I know the mom's definitely grieving, but at what point does this become unhealthy grief?
Yeah.
Because of one, we're April, so we're 6 months out. I think it was like April 12th, so we're about 6 months out. And a similar thing happened in the balloon boy thing. Oh, one of the kids inarticulate blurt out, "Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about." Because kids will say some weird thing. The kid who flew in the balloon allegedly. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm going through for example, someone here was saying, that the family knows more. This is on the Facebook page, that the family knows more about their loved one than the crime scene can tell. They know the clothing, habits, activities, surroundings better than anyone. Authorities and investigators are up with a blank slate and write the story knowing none of the stuff right away. I'm sure they deal with people in denial and also people who end up being suspects. But so much isn't logical that it is an outright failure to label this case as a suicide and close it, even without the family's knowledge of Sean and Sean's mental state in consideration. See, I think that's also a lot of jumps being made to try and, because you want, there's a reason we don't do therapy with family members or friends, because we're too close to it. Because we can't objectively analyze the situation. We can objectively analyze what's going on to be able to provide the right care and treatment. Same thing is someone who's too close to the situation cannot objectively analyze what happened. Because if you are in guilt or regretting that you didn't notice your kid depressed and they ended up killing themselves, can you ever come to the decision objectively that it was suicide? Or vice versa.
Yeah.
It was
well, I guess there are unanswered questions, but there are explanations to what could have possibly happened as well that you've been able to answer. And again, the jury's going to be out as far as if we're going to get additional evidence. And I don't even know, Ken, do you know that if they've actually released an official autopsy on, well, it should have been, right? That was back in April when
I
he
saw
died.
someone say that allegedly the parents had tried to get an autopsy report or whatever from the to get the paperwork to get the autopsy, but the police haven't released it because I guess even though they say that the police say that the case is closed, but apparently it's still open, so they can't release the report. Is what the family's saying. I don't know the validity of that, but that's what's being said.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know if there were drugs in his system. I don't know where he would have gotten them, but all that stuff that autopsies show, right? So,
yeah,
interesting.
I cannot. I mean, I could see where the information can lead to the conclusion of homicide. I just don't see.
Do a quick search on this Facebook page and see if they have an autopsy.
No, you're fine. Great. Where is it at here? I have the page up. I was trying to accidentally scroll through something. God damn it. I cannot scroll for shit right now.
Oh my gosh. All I get is this really big, long narrative. Okay. Ramona and Jared had several calls with the medical examiner regarding her findings. Okay, so that's the mother and the dad, or stepdad. When a forensic pathologist is assigned to a case, she utilizes the body, any evidence she is presented with from the investigators, and theorizes how the decedent passed based on a combination of fact and opinion. In fact, the lead investigator was listed on the autopsy as present during the exam, as well as the person who brought evidence to the medical examiners for measurements, etc. The medical exam was given the string that had been found on Sean's neck, the articles of clothing on his body, and the belt that had been tied his arms down. She sent off several samples for testing and also completed a PERK, P-E-R-K test. Once the ME was done with the body, it was released and driven down to Southern Pines, NC for the funeral. But they didn't say what the results of the autopsy were. Maybe they just can't, like you said, release it.
Hold on, I can tell you what the results are because that document on.
You can get anything. You
know,
got
the autopsy report.
Skills.
The autopsy report in full hasn't been released. What has happened is part of it was shown in a news document, and you can see and read parts of it. If I can find the damn news page that released it, where the fuck did it go? Here we go. I think I found it. So, but one of the things I wanted to show real quick, I pulled up on the Facebook page, is this here, talking about different things. Why weren't the investigators canvassing the neighborhood? Why weren't people being asked for their security footage? Shouldn't we be pulling every camera on the lane to see if there were cars or walkers in the area at the time? Why wasn't anyone doing anything? There's I have the inverse argument for that. Unless someone's going to willingly give you that footage, you would need a search warrant to get access to it. So, are you going to be able to get a search warrant for everyone on the streets video?
Why would they want to withhold it though? If they had something, if they had some security footage,
they're right to. They don't
have
to.
I know it's their right. I guess they don't have to, but why would they?
I mean, who knows? Maybe someone's got a scandal affair going on, and they don't want it to come up in. I mean, they don't want also too. If the information's only some people don't have like my wireless webcams that I have for my doorbell cam and outside camera. I have SD cards that store to it on the device itself, but it also has the option to be stored on the cloud. Mine just stores on the device. If it's only stored on the cloud, then you would have to go through Ring or Amazon to get the data. Good luck getting that in any time. Like that would take time to get. And you would need a good reason to get it. There's no motive to show a homicide to justify. Even at the onset, there's no motive to justify the need to do this level of investigation. I don't think it's necessarily a lack of investigation. I think it's when you have what you have and there's nothing pointing otherwise, why would you go that far into an investigation? Of course, the parents want everything done. They want everything done for their kid. What parent wouldn't? But as a police department is in any agency investigating it, it's that clear mindset that I have to take the objective view on it. Is, do we really need to? Is there anything here that says we need to look at other options? You have what, because they might canvass, even if they canvass the neighborhood and talk to people, the fence is 3 feet high. There's houses all around that can see into the yard. No one saw anything. No one's come out and said they saw anything. Like,
it was like,
is the canvassing really going to find anything?
4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's like mid-afternoon. So
yeah,
I'm not trying to be morbid. Like, it's just, it doesn't, like, I don't know, maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about the Chandler Halderson case and how much video footage was provided by his neighbors. And of course, there was probably more reasonable cause to ask for that footage and all that other stuff. But I found that.
Oh, God, I love that case.
I found that so fascinating just to watch. And of course, I watched it on
Chandler didn't do nothing wrong.
What's that?
Chandler's innocent. Chandler's innocent. You'll see me in anytime I'm in like Law and Crimes live chat, I'll always do like hashtag 𝐶𝐶𝐽𝐽 𝗏𝐿 is innocent or something like that because he chopped his parent. I'm a horrible person, I know.
You are a troll. I cannot believe it. A troll by day.
Well, that's like in Nick's chat occasionally, depending on the topic. I'll be like, because I'm a mod on his YouTube.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a mod on the Rumble, but I was a mod on his YouTube. And like, so my name pops up in blue. Occasionally I would post shit like, repeal the First Amendment, ban free speech, ban all this other, like, just to see if people would take the bite, because sometimes they would and it would be fun. But, like, I mean, honestly, because even with the Chandler Halderson case, I still think the girlfriend had something to do with it, because that shit was sus, like Nick pointed out, is that the state's like, the girlfriend had nothing to do with it, even though she had some things, but she had nothing to do with it. She was completely innocent. Like, even though she brought him cleaning chemicals and shit, and she was over at the house and it smelled like human bodies being cooked in. But let's just, she's innocent, guys. She's innocent. And the lesbian tractor ride and everything, like she's innocent, guy. Like, I'm just saying. I'm just saying there's some shit, there's some really sus shit that happened there.
Oh
but
my God.
I think with like this case, in that case, something seemed off.
Yeah.
Like, and you could find more pieces that led to things being off.
But that's another situation where nobody thought anything was wrong. But, Chandler was a big fat liar the whole time. He was lying about everything. So we just don't know.
Here, unless you have a skilled person to pull this homicide off, no one leaves any forensic evidence at all. No wounds, no marks, no defensive wounds, no bruises, no cuts, no scrapes, no DNA evidence, nothing at all in this crime scene. Nothing at all. That's where it seems to me that the situation is like, this whole thing, what happened to Sean, the Facebook page, is a coping mechanism for mom and family, because it makes a lot easier to say someone else took his life than he took his own. Because to him, to what they saw, even though he may have had something else going on, what they think they saw was a happy kid. When the reality may have been much more grim.
Or something they don't want to face and they did see. But the problem with that is that if they're going to continue to subscribe to that, and we've already gone and investigated everything, they still think that somehow he met with a nefarious crime or criminal or whatever, then they're never going to get a resolution, and it's just going to cause more misery. And I worry for that, right? The quality of their lives, and especially with their remaining 3 kids as well. But I also think at the same time, they need to get all their questions answered to their own satisfaction. And if they can cooperate with law enforcement and do that, I think that's probably the best recourse.
But the point I think that matters here is, and like, I'll read this and then I'll ask my question. This is from their page as one of their posts. Local churches and suicide grief groups reached out to offer condolences and support. Even though Ramona and Jared stated that they didn't believe that this was a suicide, they were consistently met with resistance. They were told it was typical of a family to be in denial after losing a loved one to suicide, and that it might take years to make peace with it. No one was listening. Everyone seemed to know better than them, and no one was taking the time to actually listen to what the family was saying. It was maddening.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, sometimes, and you know this as a counselor, is sometimes people just want to be heard, and maybe that's the Facebook's purpose, and they are being heard because a lot of people are listening. But problem is that they're bogging down the law enforcement system.
Bogging down law enforcement.
Yeah, exactly.
They're dragging in thousands of people. Not that not that the mom and dad are responsible for thousands of people's actions. Everyone's responsible for their own actions. But at what point does this, like I said, go from a healthy to an unhealthy coping mechanism? That this is no longer just, I can't admit the fact that my son killed himself, to I'm now dragging in all these other people into the situation. That it's now blown up to this degree. And like I was saying earlier, even if the parents want the questions answered to their satisfaction, it sounds like their level of satisfaction would be so high that they can never reach it because they are so insistent on it being a murder, that someone else did something, that even if all the facts point to it, are they ever going to be able to say, yes, I agree with it? Because of how hard we've come at this. Now, I get that it makes sense to go, something seems off. Here's what we think is off. But if an outside party can look at it and say the same thing, like I said, Pat Brown, and I saw people shitting on Pat Brown and other people's videos going, this person's horrible, saying it's suicide and they have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, but they have more idea talking about it than you do. As some random fucker on YouTube. No, I'm not a crime scene investigator. I'm not a fucking forensic anything. I'm a therapist. So I can come at it from the mental health side of it. Just like you. We can come at it from the mental health side and go, what was possibly going on that would do this? But with the mental health analysis and the facts at hand, I think that points to, because there's no perfect family. There's no perfect murder, like Twisted was saying. There's no perfect family. The family likely had issues that are not being seen at the surface. And the narrative format of the story comes off a little weird to me, I think. Maybe this is my observations of it. It reads like a story. Not that it's fake, but I don't know if that's being done to get people, like I was saying earlier, to get people to, oh yeah, all these things don't make sense. But it's being told in a way that's not just a presentation of factual evidence, but all this other stuff as well. Like if for me it was like a list or a presentation of here's the facts, here's the evidence, here's why we think it needs to be investigated further, versus, I mean, this, with all these Facebook posts, we're talking about probably dozens and dozens of like book pages of narrative, of information. I could condense the facts down to a couple pages. Is all this information necessary? It reads like a novel.
It reads like a novel for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting to see after this conversation what people, if this even changes anybody's mind or even opens it up, because I don't like when people will say it's definitely this or it's definitely that, because how do you know that? We don't know it's definitely suicide, but we don't definitely know it's homicide either.
It's more probable it's suicide to me. That would be my response.
Yeah.
The probability of suicide is significantly higher than the probability of homicide.
And for me, I would like, if I were the parents, there are some questions I'd like to have answered, and I'd like an additional help from law enforcement to do that. That's what I would say. And I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't say definitely I'm just going to let it go and say it's a suicide, because there are these unanswered questions. But I have to say, after talking with you and hearing what you had to say about it, everything does make sense that it could have been a suicide, and I'm more open to that now. And I still have some questions. Luckily for me, I'm not a parent and I'm not his parent. my heart goes out to his parents and his family. But I mean, because this has got to be really hard to have this many unanswered questions and a missing son. I mean, a son that's no longer with us.
Let me ask your take on this real quick, too. It says here on Tuesday, April 19th, after all of Sean's classes had been addressed, the school sent an automated voice message from the principal out to each family explaining that Sean had passed away and that grief counseling was available to all students. They also sent an email that echoed the message in the voicemail. After this went out, Ramona, the mother, received a single phone call that had all of Sean's core 6th grade teachers on the line at the same time, which I think is the weird phone call to kind of just suddenly get. They could not believe that Sean would kill himself and expressed their doubt. They stated that Sean had submitted his homework that afternoon, had walked with them to class, and was in a great mood that day. They were in shock.
Okay, so my take on that is sometimes when you do decide to commit suicide, you are in a great mood because you finally figured out what you're going to do. You have a plan and it's going to happen. And so he was maybe walking on air. But I also think that they could not believe that Sean would kill himself and expressed their doubt. I don't know that 6th grade. Oh, the teachers. Okay.
Yeah, all the 6th grade, all of his core 6th grade teachers. So it's on like I'm assuming like probably maths. Assuming it's middle school, like math, science.
So 7, maybe
English,
7
like
people.
probably like a handful of teachers, all on the phone at the same time, called the mom and said, "We don't think he killed himself, and we don't think he could have done that." I don't.
Well,
I would be surprised to have
that,
a group phone call like that all of a sudden from mom.
Yeah. Well, plus, if you're a teacher, I mean, I guess you would want to be as sympathetic as you could about it, and maybe even want to blame yourself because you had contact with him every day, and if you hadn't noticed it, maybe you were in a bit of a denial too. Somebody had mentioned possibly the parents being in denial as well, but. Yeah, it's hard for me to believe that all of the 6th grade teachers couldn't believe that he would have done this. It just seems so extreme, right? You'd think there would be maybe one teacher who would have maybe said, I wonder if maybe there was something I missed, You would think, but I don't know. It just seems a little extreme.
Here's something I think that the lack of information is kind of sticking out. Some of Sean's peers were interviewed, and Ramona and Jared requested they talk to his best friend. Parents would later call Ramona and tell her that the line of questioning made them uncomfortable and that it made them feel like they were only looking at suicide as the manner of death. This was not the Sean they knew, and their kids knew nothing made sense. But you're not telling me what the questions were asked of the kid, of the peers. You're not telling me what the responses of the peers were either. Like, if the peers are interviewed, wouldn't you have, like, in this narrative we're hearing here, in this tale, I don't say tale is a bad thing, like in this tale of what happened, right? We're not hearing like Joe said that Sean was his best friend and it confided in him all the time and he never heard anything, or that Lisa was an amazing, he helped him out all the time. She was always there for him. He was always there for her. And, nothing ever stood out to her, or even things like, he had been sad a little bit, maybe because nothing is there. This is where I think that the lack of information is more evident than not, because there's a bunch of other information in detail. Because the parents are calling and saying that they're uncomfortable with the questioning. Would the parents not be saying, well, the police and the detectives asked these questions of the kids, and the kids said this as well. So the mom and shit would have that information, I would think.
Yeah.
So it's not in this narrative. So maybe that's me being suspicious for no reason, but I would want that in there if I'm putting this out there to bolster my statements of my son didn't do this to himself. It was someone else did it. Right? Is that like hinting at there being family things that they don't want outed?
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't think he could do it even with all the other stuff, but they don't want the other stuff being said. I don't know.
Well, this is why I'd want his phone records, if we could get them. Anybody who was texting, if he had a Discord, who he was playing games with online, and all that information. That would give us a heck of a lot more information. And there's nothing I can find about that stuff. If anybody knows where to find that stuff, I'd love to be able to access it, because nobody's talking about it. I just don't. I think what you were saying earlier, maybe there's some records that you can't get to because of some security codes or something like that.
So here, I got this here. Hold on. I got to do this just right because I have to have it as high definition as possible. Because I've got
something high def.
This is the only documents that are publicly available because they were put partially redacted in a news report.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna pull this video up here. I just got to time it. I had to rewind it enough to let it play in 720p to be able to pull the documents up. So let me
let's see if you can pull this off.
Yeah, maybe.
Don't lose your other tooth while you're doing it.
Oh, don't. Why are you making jokes like that? That's not funny.
You can get 2 chiclets.
It's not funny. All right, so we have here, this here is the documents that are visible on this news report. And with a magnifier, I can read them.
Oh boy.
I don't know if you can, I don't know if the magnifier is going to show up with me sharing the screen. But basically it says time of death. It has patient presents with cardiac arrest, critical alert arrest, 12-year-old male with, and it says in it's highlighted, a history of suicidal ideations, presents to the emergency department via EMS and cardiac arrest. His last known normal is 15:30. When family spoke to him, paramedics, he was found by his sister unresponsive, and then something with a plastic, it says a plastic bag over his head around 16:45. Medics started CPR upon arrival and, hold on, measured his blood glucose at 120, administered NS, HPI, and then HPI and RLS were limited secondary to the patient being unresponsive. And then you have on this document here, it said patient respond. So that's where it says, this is from the video, history of suicidal ideations within the, I guess, the emergency department visit, but wasn't present in the autopsy report, where the autopsy report said something different. Said no known history of depression or suicidality in the autopsy. I'm guessing, my best guess would be that the autopsy or the emergency department, because he was found with in a hanging position, maybe it was interpreted as a suicide attempt, so it was accidentally documented that way. But I could read this better on my phone, so hold on.
Yeah, is there a link? Is there a link you can give? Maybe that
I can
would
post
help.
this video, but there's no actual PDF. You can only see it through this video.
Oh, I see.
And I'm using my Windows magnifier tool to like zoom in right now.
Yeah.
And it's like really hard.
Some of those are hard to read.
Yeah. Yeah. It says was partially suspended by a shoelace type string that was tied around the top of a swing set and something, and laced with something around his neck. Reportedly had a nylon bag over his head. So the ER department said plastic. This is nylon, and a belt placed over his, hold on, wearing a shirt belonging to his stepfather. Actually, I can read this better on my phone because I did this on my phone with my magnifier.
You can actually like pinch and
for some reason I can
expand.
see it better on my phone than I can on my fucking laptop. Maybe my phone's screen resolution being a bit higher or the magnifier being just a bit better.
Just put your readers on, Ken.
I don't have readers. I had PRK when I was in the military.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, which was awesome. Except
Yeah.
I was one of the people in like the 1 in 100,000 people who have small issues with your surgery, where because the contact they use to do the Band-Aid contact or whatever, because when you do PRK, they basically use like what looks like an electric toothbrush almost to scrub off your cornea.
I saw it. My husband had it done.
Yeah.
He brought me the videotape of it as well. I was almost threw up and passed out.
So yeah, it's basically like a thing that scrubs off your toothbrush, but they put a little, just a regular contact over it as a Band-Aid. The one they put on mine was too tight, so like at my 3-day follow-up, I had like a hole that was like 40% of the size of my cornea, like that hadn't healed over yet because there wasn't enough room. It was pretty, my wife was freaked out about it, but I thought it was neat because
of course you would.
I had to drive 3 hours one way to get it looked at three times that week because
I thought they wouldn't let you drive. They don't let you drive home from the surgery, but they
don't let you drive home. I had
Yeah.
a buddy of mine from our office who
Yeah.
came with me. They gave him the paid day off.
Holy cow.
He basically got to take the day off. Okay.
All right. So
I
you
can
don't
see
have
that
readers. You
document.
don't need readers. Actually, you're probably, because you're not that
I'm
old.
2020 or 2015. I don't remember which I've with.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
But if you're in your early 30s, I think is what you said you are, you're probably going to need readers sometime. I'm just predicting that. No one gave you that suggestion. Maybe you'll be one of the people that don't need them, but
I can see it better now. I have my phone.
Okay, great.
Partially suspended by a shoelace type string tied around the top of the sling stag. Reportedly had a nylon bag around his head and a belt placed over his arms, hanging by his something of his side. Wearing a t-shirt belonging to his stepfather, a pair of jeans, and Sean's glasses were found on the ground nearby. No note was found. Something covered up. Sean had no chronic medical problems, no history of substance abuse, and no history of depression or suicidality. Police investigation raised the possibility of bullying at school. Sean was found to have an upward sloping ligature furrow on the front and sides of his neck, and I can't read that. And posteriorly checked the it's so hard. It's just so low resolution, which was consistent with provided ligature. A few superficial abrasions were present on Sean's forehead, right cheek, and right shoulder, possibly sustained when he pulled something during resuscitation attempts. No life-threatening blunt force injuries were present, and no defensive or something type injuries were present. A post-mortem viral test performed at the behest of something was positive for SARS-CoV-2. This did not cause or contribute to Sean's death. Post-mortem toxicological testing was negative. No alcohol or drugs detected. At the request of Sean's family, an expanded testing panel was ordered to include chloroform and common sedatives. So it sounds like nothing was found.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
So I mean, I think, like I said, it sucks that we have this information here, but also I don't remember how to cancel this stupid magnifier. Oh, there we go. Because it's like everything's just blown up to like 300%.
One of the things I have heard though, and obviously 12 is kind of young to be he looks like he's got, from his pictures, he looks like he's got a lot of energy. Apparently he was a high energy kind of not hyper, but just really high energy, high enthusiastic kid. Part of me wonders, because if it was a suicide, if there was either ADHD or undiagnosed bipolar disorder starting, because a lot of completed suicides happen during a manic phase. So there could have been a manic phase in there or even hypomania happening. That's just another idea. As you were reading through that, I'm like, okay, if there's no substances in his system, was there something in his physiology that was missed and sort of looked over because we're being careful to look after autistic younger brother. And
here's a picture of him that looks more recent. I mean, I think they're sitting, but he looks of a decent size. Like he looks around
about as tall as
mom's build.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know. Like, and then I think if I go back a little bit to here where mom and dad are sitting next to mom and stepdad are sitting next to each other. So I mean, I would guess that the I would guess that it's probably a few inches shorter, but I'm not seeing him being like this, like foot something shorter. That like there's a bunch of older, like you see some older pictures and stuff. Like this looks like an older picture of him. That's not a current picture. Like See, this looks like a standing picture.
Oh, okay.
And
Now
he's
that he
standing.
looks pretty kind of tall in that last one that you just
So
did.
he's at least as tall as mom. So he's probably a taller kid. And so
Okay.
his
Yeah, for
mom
12.
and dad sitting down. So I can't see legs or anything here, but I'm guessing there's a few inches difference in height, but I'm not guessing that there's so much difference that it's like you would picture like a toddler wearing an adult pair of pants, like it's just draping behind them, right? It might just be a little bit longer, but you know. So I don't. Maybe that's just me.
I apologize about my comment to Twisted. I thought you were talking about Sean, but apparently you're talking about Ken. You don't think that he's even legally allowed to drink yet because he's such a baby.
Oh yeah,
so I said you could always steal the parents' booze. I'm sure that's maybe true for Ken too, but I know that he was drinking on his birthday, or at least trying to
I'm
do
still
so.
owing those, and I don't want to do that while my tooth is broken. Because I don't know how that's going to go. I think that will hurt. So let me get my tooth fixed.
Maybe that's what caused it. All of the
oh God, don't say that.
The glass against the teeth. Just
no,
don't. Back.
I felt when my tooth broke because I bit down on a popcorn kernel and I felt
that
it
was
break.
A fun night. For anybody who didn't catch that stream, you need to go back, and we were playing Cards Against Humanity, and
it was a great stream.
Ken was quite happy,
slightly intoxicated. I mean, here he is standing on something. I mean, he looks tall, right? Like,
yeah, that's the picture I'm looking at, and that was probably on their Disney cruise, right? And that might have been one of the more recent pictures. He looks like he's kind of a.
It looks a little faded, though. It looks like a little bit of a faded photo or washed out photo. But like, I was tall. Like, I was taller than my mom by the time I was in my early teens, I think.
Okay.
And and my mom's like 5'6" or 5'7". Like, my mom's not that tall. Like, so, and like Twisted was saying, he was, his a stepdad, so it's not bio dad, so it's stepdad. So God knows how the divorce went down. We don't know how any of that stuff happened. And I could see where issues with the stepdad relating to the divorce. Maybe he blames the stepdad for mom and dad breaking up, and is a final fuck you to stepdad. It's, like, or this is my way of saying I was unhappy. Stepdad was responsible because I didn't want to leave a note. There's a bunch of possible inferences to be made from the clothing. We know that there was no sexual abuse,
right?
Or at least at the time of death, or signs of sexual abuse. Like,
do you happen to know, as far as the military goes, can you get a regular background check done? Those ones that you can pay for online, on people who are in the military, or are they kind of hidden?
There's
from
a way
the public.
I probably could do a FOIA and get. I don't think she'd have a DD-214 because she's still in, right? Obviously, so.
And neither would he.
I would. It'd be different if they were separated.
But I wonder if military people are hidden from that public ability.
There's probably a way to verify her military. Like, I'm sure I could figure out her information if I dug a little deeper. I wasn't trying to dig too deep. We know what rank she is, but we don't know what her MOS or AFSC is. Lieutenant Colonel's vague. It's just her rank. Yeah, her rank doesn't tell me much. I mean, you could be a lieutenant colonel over finance,
where they've lived and all that other stuff. I would just love to have more information on the family. And if walls could talk, right? If walls could talk, what was actually really going on in that household, as far as that goes. So, for me, it's there's still some unanswered questions. Are you going to do a poll? Are you going to poll your chat?
Yeah. What should I put in the poll?
I guess maybe just, I don't know, maybe just as simply was Sean's death a suicide? Was Sean's death a murder? Or I don't know. I've never done a poll before. I think they're pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
Maybe if somebody in the chat has an idea. I'm not very good at polls. I like taking them. And I like dancing on them. Just kidding. But I do like.
Flip that.
I do.
I'm gonna do this. Homicide by. I'm gonna do suicide, homicide by stranger, homicide by known person, or I don't know. I can only do 4 options. So
Okay.
there's the poll. So give you guys a minute to take that. Just because she got a job at the Pentagon, there are finance jobs at the Pentagon, there are personnel jobs at the Pentagon. It's just we don't know what her job is, which I think would be more insightful than anything, because it would be what the hell am I trying to think?
Twisted Puppet's cracking me up.
Yeah, it would be interesting if they were still in some sort of like an intelligence analyst or something like that, or something where there's more sway, or maybe that has a position that's connections or something. But if it's just a basic position, like just some support role or something else, or I mean, that's not really leading any credibility to any kind of this is against this is some sort of secret operation against the dad or the mom, like that's
yeah. Okay, so you got part of the info there. Yeah, wow, I can't believe we've almost been on 3 hours talking about this.
I know,
but you really did you did a really nice job of being able to counter all the questions.
You're trying.
I was looking at the most recent post in the Facebook group, and it had all of the concerns in there. And I was proud to say that I had already had addressed most of them with you. But I think now we've addressed all of them. And somebody was saying that Tim is going live. So I don't know what that's all about. And
I might need to jump over there and
yeah, that's what
their shit.
Yeah, we need to troll the shit out of Tim. What would we do? Yeah. Don't tell. Don't tell me.
If I got the link, I could give you the link and we could both jump over there. I'm sure Drexel would love to meet you.
It says with Drex.
Are they live yet, or are they going live?
I don't know. Somebody said that earlier.
I know they're supposed to be going live. Let me see if they are live.
But what is that?
They're not live right now. They're going live at 8.
Oh, they're going live at 8
Drexel's supposed to be going up against so in 2 hours. Drexel's going to be going against people who were not being supportive of Racket because of him being pulled off of YouTube. So 𝐒𝐴𝐳𝐵𝐷𝐻, who kind of got a lot of her following from Nick during Rittenhouse, and then her channel took way the fuck off during Johnny Depp.
Right.
She kind of waffled about saying, Nick being kind of like a controversial figure, did a tweet about it, but if you like him, you can go support him. And so Drex is ready to go to fuck off because he's pissed because I've gone full out. Nick has earned my support and trust. Drexel has been friends with Nick for a long fucking time. So yeah, I also
so the live is not on Tim's channel. It's on MGTOWN podcast
in 2 hours.
In a couple hours. Okay, wow.
So time to grab a snack.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you know who 𝐒𝐴𝐳𝐵𝐷𝐻 is or not.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so
I know. Yep. Okay. She's in California, and she's the cute little blonde-haired lady who's a lawyer. And I remember
she's gonna get wrecked over its twisted thing.
What's that?
Funny. Twisted thing. She's gonna get wrecked. I'm like, that's great. So.
I don't exactly. I really prefer Rackets, but he disinvolved himself with the LawTubers, and I thought that was a real cool thing for him to do. He says, "I'm just me, and just I'm not a part of any community, although people are welcome in my channel." And I really thought that was a really good message. I don't agree with him on everything, but I thought that was pretty sound. And he was not disrespectful to her, 𝐒𝐴𝐳𝐵𝐷𝐻 with all the stuff that I think it was the DUI guy. The
DUI guy shit caused a lot of drama, which was kind of dumb, but
right.
I was gonna do this on my locals because I was gonna try and keep it separate from this, but I thought it would be fun to just bring this up real quick. This was the shit we were talking about in Discord. That stream that Spectre was involved in. The critical someone. The certain person's name starts with K.
Yeah, are you gonna talk about that? Because Elisa wanted me to send her, unless you want to send her a message that we're gonna talk about it
If you want to, you
through
can. I'm trying to.
Discord. Yeah,
I'll send her a thing real quick so that way she
okay,
knows.
you're probably more able to do that because you're
Yeah.
a youngster and you're better with technology than I am. I don't even really know how to work Discord. I just go on there and like, what's going on?
Yeah. So for those who are out of the loop, Critical K was someone who was involved in trying to dox me last year during my job loss situation during my Sophie Long stream. I say try to because she was unable to discern me from a different Ken she was aware of covering the case. And in doing so, he posted the wrong phone number to a different Ken's agency or company. That was just some other guy covering the case. And yeah, let's just say that but she didn't technically dox me because she wasn't able to recognize who I was, but she was definitely trying to call, and how she was saying call and tell them that this person's doing things that shouldn't be, that they're talking about this case and they're disgusting. She also called every male who covered the Sophie Long case basically a pedophile. That anyone talking about, and she said anyone who's talking about a little girl's genitals, no matter what the context, so that means your doctor talking about a little girl's genitals is also a pedophile. It's also a creep. That means literally just reading a court document, no matter what the situation or context, whether it's a private medical record, whether it's a court document, no matter what it is, you're automatically a creep. You're automatically a pedophile because you're talking about a little girl's genitals. But it's not the opposite. It's not. You're not a pedophile if you're a woman reading a little boy's document. It's only, because it's different for a mom, it's different for a little girl, is what her statement was. So let me go ahead and just finish redacting this document real quick. And I think I can say that that's redacted enough to put on screen. So this
Awesome.
so I gotta send this to myself basically. But the other day, Spectre did a call in to this person's channel and was talking to them about some things. During that stream, they said that they had been a therapist for 25 years. And I thought that rung weird to me because if she was a therapist, she definitely didn't show anything that gave the indication she knew what the hell she was talking about, to say the least, right? And I can get the clip. I can post the clip if necessary. I can show receipt. But let me go ahead and show this receipt because this is the best receipt.
Oh, right? It's a receipt.
So I did some digging in 3 different states. Because basically every state you can look up the licensing information for any occupational licensing because that information is supposed to be kind of easy to look up to verify that the person you're seeing is actually licensed in what they're doing, right? There's a reason for that. So I did some digging. I spent about 40 minutes on it or so, give or take. And when I couldn't find her name in any of the 3 states under any therapist license, I did a search for any occupational license, right? Just any occupational license to see if there was anything that could be remote. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I typed something in wrong. That's when I found this. This is the licensed professional information from the state of Michigan, and I centered the number, right? I centered the name partially, but this is the licensed professional information occupational therapy assistant for the person's name, the date they were issued, their license expired, and their license status, and the county, which is the county of residence, right? So, last time I checked, being a therapist for 25 years is different than being an occupational therapy assistant.
Assistant even. She's not even an occupational therapist. Okay.
Yeah, not even. Now, here's where I was talking, and I was talking to Spectre about it, and I think someone else. I was like, maybe she held the license because it was a lower paying job and it was something easy to keep, but it's a decently paying job. It's like mid 40s, 50s for salary in her state. So it's not like it's a low paying job. So to me, it would make sense to keep that license and the therapist license, but there's no therapist license either lapsed, old or new or current in any of the states that she could be or currently is residing in.
Right.
Ever. That's on record.
Wow.
So, you want to call yourself a therapist, that you're a therapist, and I have the clip, you're a therapist for 25 years, that doesn't seem to add up to me. So,
she did say that. And you know, so she did say, she's not technically lying though, I have to say, because therapist is, you know, there's therapy in her title. So she does have a license that says therapy, but it was very a little bit misleading. Yeah.
Very disingenuous and misleading, I'll say.
Yeah.
I'll say it so you don't have to. Because we both interacted with said person, and both times, because during her stream with Spectre, she's like, I sent Ken Jennings my phone number. He could talk to me. He could send me information. Because she's saying, you know, there's no proof he was fired, that, you know, maybe he was fired for doing inappropriate things, which, by the way, is defamation per se, just saying. So damages are presumed.
Yeah, and I think I'd said that my own experience with that is that she was the reason that I jumped onto her panel one night was because she was on and speculating about the Chris Watts case and about how the two girls were just the right height, because apparently Chris Watts took showers with his girls, you know, and who knows if they had bathing suits on or whatever they had. But she was talking about, let's see, Bella had just turned 4 and Cece was 6.
Is it really that big of a deal? I guess she thinks all men are pedophiles. So for her, she thinks it's a big deal.
She was talking about the fact that taking his height into consideration and the girls' heights, that they would be right at that level. And I just blew my top because, first off, the two girls are deceased. And I mean, maybe it's not slanderous when they're deceased, but there are more. So my whole thing was, I was going to jump on there and say, there are more respectful ways to talk about this kind of thing than to say, you know, well, if he took a shower with them and he lotioned them up and he did, I mean, she was just implying a whole lot of things about that. And I don't know why it's not okay for you to read. I mean, you say you got the report by legal means. I have to trust that that's true.
The reason that they were able to dox me was because they used parts of the ways that I requested the documents before the sealing as the way to partly dox me. It's not possible to really do it now because I no longer have a Psychology Today profile with that number attached to it. But yeah, fuck Psychology Today. But let's just say that she was that, you know, implying that, you were never fired from. We don't know where he was fired from. We don't know if he was an actual therapist. And Rakita has talked to me more than once, and he said to me in private, he's like, if you're not a therapist, you're doing a damn good job of faking it. You'd have me fooled. And so he's like, you know, you seem to know what you're talking about. Or at least I try to.
Yeah. And I couldn't actually get my point across that night. I was not as good. Who was the person? Oh my gosh, I can't remember the one that you sent me the link that he went on there.
That was Spectre.
Spectre. Oh my gosh. Yeah. He did such an amazing job with her. And
so
I couldn't do that because I was trying to be, you know, and plus I was a little bit more naive back then. That was in early 2021. So, yeah, God, was it that long ago? Man,
I wish we had a clip of that, the stream where you were on. I don't know.
It's still on Not Another Tea channel.
Is it really?
Check it out. It's still on there. I've actually screen recorded it too. I was actually wrote a song about it, and I was going to put it to a video and all this stuff, but then I kind of got all my anger out, you know. But I got pretty slaughtered before I could even make my point. And then she drew the kazoo and got her little mini violin out. So I got the whole entire treatment, Ken. I remember sharing that with you when it happened. Not too long after it happened, when you got fired. And I was just so, I was just really empathic about, you know, that whole thing, because I know what it's like to be. I mean, I don't like know what it's like to be fired.
I found the Not Another Tea. I wish there was just a straight clip without her commentary over it, but
well, she doesn't talk a whole lot through a bunch. If people want to watch it,
I mean, we could watch it now if you want.
Oh no, I definitely don't give me PTSD. But if you want to put the link in the chat, people can watch it if they want to. But I got. Yeah,
she's just kind of disingenuous a little bit. Let's just say that much. There's the link to it. Yeah. But yeah,
and Not Another Tea
she's pretty
channel,
disingenuous.
The lady on Not Another Tea channel and I have communicated, and she says it's completely fine for me to use any materials of hers. I know it's fair use anyway, but I always like to ask permission. But so yeah, check it out if you wanna see a shit show.
Like 20 minutes long, the video. So
yeah, and you know, then they ended up, you know, kind of kicking me off their panel. But I'll tell you that. The one that you sent me yesterday was he did an amazing job going up there.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know she was back on YouTube. I thought she had gotten canceled.
She's been banned, but she's been ban evading. So
okay, ban evading.
Yeah, she's been ban evading because she was kinky. Banned. Because I actually saved one of her last few streams before her ban, because her ban happened like right after, like within a week, or I think within a month or so of my job termination. But I archived the video where she was gloating about my termination and shit the next day or whatever, or the same night. So,
yeah, and all of that's deleted unless you've screen recorded.
I have a copy of it. I have a way to save videos live as they're going. I have a way to save live chats and archive them in text form. I have a way to basically run scripts that keep an eye on any channel I want to. It will auto archive anything the moment something starts popping up, and will capture it and save it. So
wow, well, yeah, good for you.
Because of all the shit that was going down after my termination, all the people just talking shit about me, I was keeping good tabs on everybody. I still kind of do, for those who are curious. I know when people talk about me, just to say the least.
Yeah.
But
well, you got ears everywhere, eyes and ears everywhere. By the way,
a person who does data hoarding is a hobby. Bad idea. Literally save terabytes of data for fun is a hobby. So when you give me something to save, I know how to save it.
Wow.
I
did message Elisa about us talking about CK, because I noticed that she did start to take some shots at her, and particularly,
yeah, she was doing it pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, really coming down on Elisa, and I don't know if she's still listening. She said she was listening, and I just messaged her on Discord. It took a little time to find her. Yeah. She has a different name, but I know her icon, and so. But I thought that was sort of not great.
I didn't notice that twisted. So I didn't notice that. I guess. Well, right now I know she's talking about the Kylie Rodney thing is the current YouTube drama, true crime thing. The Sean Daugherty case, I guess that's how you pronounce it. That's one of the current things. What else? Debbie Collier.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I covered this is because it was pissing me off. That perplexed cutie chick just running with fucking false information about Sean.
It's
just plastic bag, and there's no way this could be a suicide. And I'm like, no, there's plenty of ways this could be a suicide. Maybe we don't like that it's a suicide, but there's plenty of ways it could be a suicide. No one wants the 12-year-old to off themselves, but unfortunately it happens. Like for more, I think it's like enough kids and teens kill themselves each year. It's more than the deaths of. It's basically more than a World Trade Center every year worth of suicides of kids. It's It's like the second leading cause of death behind accidents. More than cancer, more than other shit combined. Like, it is the second leading cause of death behind like accidents. So.
And what do you think the reason is? I know there's probably a conglomeration of reasons, but what sort of reasons do you think are behind that? It can't all be COVID related, but I do think that COVID had something to do with it, the spike. But what is bothering our young kids these days?
I think social media is, because I know, for example, nowadays, like, I did some stupid shit when I was a kid that was recorded but wasn't put on the internet for everyone to see. I know there's certain things I put on when I was Sean's age that are on the internet that I can still go find those pictures if I know where to look. Thankfully, no one knows that it's me. But I did stupid shit as a kid, and nowadays it's like you upload something to TikTok or Twitter, and if you do something people don't like, they can just criticize. Everyone's criticizing you. I mean, people didn't like me talking about a particular document, and they went after my livelihood. People don't like, and again, that's an adult, but for kids, if you're not doing the right thing, if you're not, like my one client at the private practice before I was fired, he was feeling left out because she wasn't allowed to participate on social media. She had been taken away the privilege of it because of doing some inappropriate things on it that she kind of didn't necessarily recognize were inappropriate due to her age. She kind of got bullied a little bit, or kind of coerced into doing things she didn't know was not okay. And her parents kind of hyper responded to protect her. And in doing so, it isolated her from social media. And all of her friends were using social media. And this was during the pandemic too, when everyone was using social media to contact each other. And so if you can't do the cool thing, the current thing, if you're not able to participate in it, it's going to make you feel left out and feel depressed. And, if you, for whatever, remember doing shit when I was 12, I wasn't, when I was 12, 13, when I was a younger kid, I was definitely different. I was learning to do like programming and web design and shit when I was like 13. And I got made fun of for it a lot. I got bullied a lot. And I know how that felt. I didn't really share it much with family members. I had a couple friends I would share shit with, but my mom and dad didn't really have a good insight to what was going on during my teenage years. They should have. They probably needed to know a little bit more, but I also was very good at keeping certain things from them. I was also very good at, my dad tried to ground me from my computer. He'd take my power cord. I had backup power cord. Like, I could hook the shit up without him knowing. Like, I skipped school for like 3 weeks straight once. They thought I died. They called my dad and was like, "Is your son still alive? He hasn't been in school in 3 weeks." I got in trouble for that one. But then I learned how to skip school after that without getting caught, because they would call home every third day after that. Like, so it was like you could skip 2 and then you had to go to school. And I got really good at skipping school because I didn't want to go. It's not because I didn't want to learn. It's because I didn't like going to school. I didn't like the people. So I went to a small school and my graduating class was less than 100 people. So you knew everyone in your class. You knew a lot of people in the class below you. You knew some of the people in the class above you before senior class, before you were senior. So like, it wasn't that hard for shit to get around. Like for dumb shit to get around, or for people to just go join cliques and you're not part of them. And so I have my reasons for what I did during my teenage years. God knows, why other people did the things they do. So.
Yeah, I think that the main things that come through my office, not just from adolescents, but from people in general, is people have problems with other people. And I think that with social media being such a big thing, we have more exposure to more people because social media makes it that way. And then if we make a comment and then it gets lambasted or whatever happens to it, or even if we post a picture and a bunch of people come down on it or make fun of it or whatever, the sensitive people are probably going to take that a whole lot more. I don't know. They're going to have more difficulty coping with it. And if they don't have a supportive environment like parents to talk to that they feel comfortable talking with, then they may feel it's kind of hopeless just to be in this world that we're in. But
that is how a lot of kids feel. Like,
well, I wish that more kids knew that they have potential. I wish they could more realize their potential and their beauty and their what they have to give, their purpose, their power. I really do wish that young people would realize that, and even young people that are your age, can. I mean, you're still relatively young, right?
Youngish.
I'm thinking about, but the teens and the 20s, and I'm just really worried about that generation right in there. I don't know what they're even calling it now. I think you're Gen Z, right? No, you're Gen X.
A millennial.
Oh, you're a millennial. That's right.
I'm still technically a millennial.
Okay. Yeah, so we're talking about the Gen Z people, or the Gen Y people, or whoever are teens right now. So, but I do wish that they would know. I wish people would be more encouraging of the young people, and I also wish they didn't have so much pressure in school. Like now their parents get to look at everything online. They get to see all of their grades. They get to see when their assignments are posted, when they're not turned in, and then they get to hound them. So kids do feel very much pressure with school. Not all kids are book learners, or a lot of them are kinesthetic learners, and they struggle a lot. They've struggled a lot during COVID with the whole Zoom thing. And especially the kinesthetic learners had really struggled with the Zoom environment.
Oh, I agree.
So I just so we just I guess the only thing we can do is maybe get in the field, and if we know anybody that's a younger person, just try and tell them how great they are and recognize their potential and encourage them through. That's what I try and do. There's very little I can do except for just continue to post podcasts that are just kind of trying to help people.
The thing that I think would, because a lot of parents, like I told my stepmom this, because when my dad got remarried and I had a stepbrother or whatever, before he was even, like right as he was getting to enter his teens, and this was years ago, before I was a therapist, long before I was doing all the shit I'm in now, I told her, if you continue to hover and helicopter over him, you will push him further and further away, and to the point where the moment he turns 18, he might just say, fuck it, and I'm taking off. And he will not talk to you. Your relationship will suck because you were wanting to control too much. You have to give up control, especially as they get into those preteen years. You got to give up control. You got to give up and give them, I hate the phrasing, give them a little bit of rope to where you can hang themselves, but you can still catch them when they fall, so that there's some consequence. I know it's a bad metaphor. It's
well, especially for this stream, right?
For this stream, it's a bad
Sean.
You got to give them a little bit to where if they fall, it's going to hurt, but they could still they can stand up and be okay. It's not going to be the end of the world. It will not be pulling their feet from out from under them. They have nothing they can stand on, and then it's latched tightly on, and there's nothing you can do. I've worked with families to come up with, and unfortunately heard of it being undone after I was no longer a therapist, putting in place things that work for the family, and that the therapist is like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like the one kid I was talking about with the social media and cell phone issues, working with the parents to get the kid access to the phone back, and there being healthy boundaries with it, and the kid being open with mom. And then when I'm no longer the therapist, the new therapist goes, why you give the kid has cell phone issues before? Why would you give the kid the phone back? Take the phone away. And so they take the phone away, and then there's more issues. Like, that doesn't mean, like, I was so pissed when I heard this story. Like, you don't need to use, like, the same pocket. Just because there's an issue doesn't mean you just automatically take it away. You work with it. I've always built my family counseling issues to working with the family and having the family work together as a team, to where the kid can come in and say, Mom, I want to smoke drugs tonight. My friends are going to a party. And you as the parent don't freak out. You go, okay, let's talk about it. And if you can give that kind of reaction and have that kind of dynamic with your kid, you will never fail your kid in a way that will, because they can truly come to you and say, Mom, I want to try drugs tonight. But I wanted to see what you thought about it. And I at least wanted to let you know. And then you as the parent can either A, overreact with that, underreact with that, or the way I like to have it is talk it through with them. Because they're thinking, I'm going to be cool. It sounds neat. Maybe they're, doing it for the wrong reasons. Maybe they're trying it for what they think are the right reasons. But if you can't have a place where you can talk with your kid, where you can't interact and engage with your kid, then they're never going to come to you when it truly matters.
Right.
How are things? How was school today? Okay. How was school today? Okay. Did you do your homework? Yeah. That's not a conversation. Like if your kids are giving you information without you having to dig it out of them, that's what you want. You want them to actively share with you. You want them to know that just because you said you did something, like I wrecked the van, I wrecked the car. Okay. What happened? I was turning, or I'm not going to lie, I did something stupid. I was on my phone. All right. Well, how should we? Well, you recognize, you admitted to fault. That doesn't mean you don't get no punishment. So what's the fair punishment for this situation? What's the fair consequence for this situation? If you can do that, then your kids have got a reason to be honest and a reason to make changes that actually matter instead of hiding shit from you. If I could go back and redo parts of my teenage years and not hide a lot of the shit, I wish I could. I did a lot of shit I really wish I didn't do. Like,
yeah, right.
You know,
it sounds like you're a pretty wild child. Bet you got some stories to tell. You should do a stream on that sometime and just say like a story time with Uncle Ken.
I mean, I was addicted to World of Warcraft when I was in my teens.
Oh, yeah, that was
I was playing. I mean, I would play it now, except I'm concerned that I could not manage myself because I like playing the game that much. It was a great game. I got so involved with it. My wife and I even played it together. After we got married and stuff, we both liked the game, but I don't feel if I can handle myself to manage my day-to-day life because I know how easy it was for me to get sucked in because I legit, and this is where I think was an interesting observation from my childhood that I think is a big sign for what things mean today is I had dreams during my teenage years that I was my character in the game and that was actually who I was. And like I was engaging in things like it was real because I was playing so much. So I was invested in the game. It felt real and not like, because it was who I spent a lot of time with. Not that I was role playing and stuff, but the visual imagery, watching the graphics and shit. In a dream, I was that person on more than one occasion. And like I fell to my death on one occasion, like I would in game. Obviously, you can't resurrect in real life. Thankfully, it was a dream. But I just think, when you have that, especially during those very specific years, the borderlines between reality and video games or other imagery, it's easy to blur those. I had kids when I was working at the going to people's home, the community counseling, where they were addicted to the tablets. And they were talking about things happening in the video games like they were real events. And these are like 6, 8, 10-year-old kids. And like they're talking about it. And sometimes, and one of them had autism, but like the borderline between reality and fantasy was sometimes blurred. And so it's easy for that to happen. There are a lot of things that kids do. Like me, I spent 16, 18 hours a day playing video games during my high school years, a lot. Middle school too. Like I skipped a lot. I didn't want to go to school. You give me a test or you give me stuff, I can pass it for the most part. I can ace, I'm good at passing tests and doing the educational stuff. I didn't like the environment. Like there's a lot of just pieces that I think get missed in the for parents. And I present solutions that I think are creative and is an effort to get the parents to work with their kids because I would rather them do something that seems atypical and unusual and at work than to try and do the cut and paste solutions, all the shit that's in the therapy treatment books, like family counseling issues with electronic devices. Here's steps A, B, and C to deal with it and to apply the same type of thing over and over again. Like, I don't want to copy paste my treatment. I don't want to copy paste, how I interact with my clients and their families. And, that's why I set up the company. And I tell the parents at the onset, I'm going to hold your child to the same confidentiality as an adult, that you cannot breach the confidentiality because you just want to. Because you want to know what's going on in therapy. I'm not going to do that. Your child, if you want to have them do therapy with me, I'm going to give them the same protection you would have as an adult, because it's not fair to you and to them to be able to undermine their counseling because you want to know what's going on. Can you request their records? Fine, but the notes aren't going to tell you anything. If you want anything, it's got to come from me, and I need your kids' permission to tell me. There's like a couple exceptions where I would tell the kids if it's specific things that I felt were really important, that were detrimental to your, not like reportable things or disclosure things, but like very close to borderlining that stuff. Like, these are things maybe we're going to talk, and you're like, maybe it's a really good idea we talk to mom or dad about this, or whoever. Because those are things that might start bordering into safety issues. But other than that, whatever happened in counseling was, yeah, we talked about, dealing with anger, feeling better about ourselves. Without the kids' permission, I didn't say shit. And parents and kids love that, because they know they had someone they could trust, they could go to, and it helped them rebuild their relationships, to help them, build trust in their families. And so that's why I do it the way I do. People tell me they've never had a counselor like me, and I've yet to have a truly negative experience with therapy where it didn't work, where it failed. And I consider the track record good. It almost scares me that I have the track record. I wish I had more failures almost, because it scares me that I'm doing the level that I'm at, because I don't think I should be doing the quality I'm at the level I'm at this part of my career. You would think I would be fucking up more. I don't know why I'm not, but I would think I would be fucking up more. So.
Well, if anybody hasn't seen if anybody hasn't seen Ken's episode with the mock interview with him and well, I guess I could say it's Twisted Puppet, but
yeah.
That I loved that, and that was such a beautiful
fun session.
It is a beautiful illustration of how therapy could happen with a kid who is just kind of resistant and not trusting even the therapist, right? They're not trusting their parents, but they're not trusting the therapist, or their behavior had changed. And the way that you handled it was really super awesome. How, I don't know if you've seen, like when Dr. Phil is the worst example, but he's the only one that's coming up right now.
Oh,
but
you don't like Dr. Phil?
Well,
I'm kidding.
He's always like, anyway. But you're looking at a therapist, and if you see him on TV and you're thinking, I might go this direction or whatever. And I noticed myself doing that. And I thought, all of these different roads are going to lead to the same place. There's no wrong way to do it, but it was so cool to see your way of doing it. And then of course, Twisted was amazing. So check that out if you haven't. Amazing. Yeah, she was the typical 16-year-old girl.
Yeah, like, I've always been amazed at the level of detail the clients I work with, especially the kids I work with, will tell me. They'll tell me some things that I would never expect. And then when parents are like, because one of the things that has pissed me off the most about people like Critical K and the other people is when they insult me and try to say like I'm this disgusting pervert and shit. Because I've got screenshots of all these comments from their chats and stuff about how I'm disgusting, how I'm a pervert, how I'm a pedophile and all this shit. But yet, if I was so bad at that one, I probably would have outed myself by now and lost my job too. Would parents be comfortable with me talking with those like sex topics about their kids? Because that's come up more than once, where kids talk to me about that because they trust me. And sometimes the parents the parents have come to me and said, I need you to talk to my kid about this because this situation came up. Because their kid, the one that stumbled on the porn. Or right. that they have found porn, like they want the kid to talk to me. Okay. Like,
especially if you're working with the trans population too, that's gotta come up.
It does come up. Like, it all comes up. And it's not always the most comfortable, but it's
not
part
for
of the
them
job.
Or for you, but you stay with them through it, right? You don't leave the conversation or act awkward or act weird or change the topic to the weather or whatever,
I mean, some parents don't know how to have that conversation, which is fine. We kind of know how to do it because we're kind of required to a bit. And
experience helps, right?
If a parent, to me, that was one of the more things that let me know I was doing my job a bit right, because if a parent was like, this happened with my kid, I trust you with my daughter to talk to you as a male about this topic. that I was establishing appropriate boundaries and relationships with my clients, because
Absolutely.
because if they did not, they would never have mentioned it. They would have dealt with it another way, and I would have dealt with the fallout versus dealing with it the way it was dealt with. So to me, I think I'm doing things somewhat the right way. So
wow,
doesn't always end in my favor, but it's I think I'm taking the right stance as an overall perspective from the professional take, if that makes sense.
I always like to say a good counselor knows people and they know pain. And that's really, my ethics teacher taught me that. And that's all you really have to know. And so there's so many different paths up the hill. Sometimes it takes a little longer with one. If you were able to do a lot of work with your client in that 1 hour of your session, I think it was a couple of months ago, if people want to check that one out. But
I don't remember the name of the stream.
Yeah, I think it was like mock session or something like that. Like, I think it was just called like mock session.
Like a mock, it was like a mock therapy. If you look up,
mock therapy
I'm sure
session.
it'll pop up.
Yeah.
There was a reason for it. I don't remember why, but it was fun. It was educational. It was a good test for me because, you know, because if I fucked up on stream, I'd look pretty stupid. But
no, you did great. You both did great. I loved listening to that. In fact, I remember that day because it was hot. I was doing yard work and I was out there and I was just like thinking, how would I handle this? You know, because you do that when you watch Dr. Phil.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
It's like, I don't know if I would go there if I were them, but then they end up making it work out. So just understand that people have different ways of doing therapy. You just have to know people and you have to know pain. And then you just hold space for them and try and draw them out as best you can. And you're not perfect. And the other thing I would say is don't ever take credit for any successes or failures, because if you take any credit for any client's successes, you'll have to take credit for their failures too. So just don't take credit. Give them all the credit.
Oh, I do. They'll thank me and I'll be like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell them, I'm like, but they'll still try to push it on me. I'll be like, I didn't do anything. I'm like, you did the work. I'm like, all I did, and I do it in a joking way because I think it helps reinforce their impact. Is like, all I did was ask a bunch of questions that you were already asking and made you get to 90% of my job is asking you questions, re-asking the things you say in different ways until make you come to the realization yourself. Because I'm never going to give you advice. Because people ask me that, can I have some advice? No, do not give advice. I'll give observations, I'll give insight, but I'll never give advice because advice doesn't give you anything. Advice only hurts you in the end, in my opinion.
I like the vision of a boat. Like you are actually at the wheel sailing the boat, and I'm in back, and I'm just sort of offering you suggestions about what waters we might want to explore, or maybe we want to go here. But you're the one that gets us to the destination that you want to go and be at. It's not me. I'm here just to support you and to help you toward your goal. And that's a cool analogy.
That's the way
I like
try to
use.
Look at it.
Yeah,
it's like there's no real perfect way to do any of it. It's just doing it, a way that I think just ends up working out. Everyone's going to work out differently. Just give me 1 minute. I'll be right back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So Outpost is saying something about Dr. Phil. Wow, I can even hear his little Texas accent. This is my world, and you are a visitor. Yeah, what does he always say? He always says like, "What makes it okay for you to do this?" That's my best Dr. Phil. And Twisted has a link for a palate cleanser.
The hour of kittens playing.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. And I love that because this was a heavy topic today, but and we still don't have a whole lot of answers about what happened, but we do know that there are all kinds of possibilities.
Where'd the poll results go?
Oh yeah, where'd the poll come to?
64% suicide, 35% said I don't know. No one said homicide. Out of 14 votes.
Wow. I have to confess I said I don't know. So yeah.
say?
I don't know. I need more information. Like I said, if I were their parents, I would be working with law enforcement to get the answers to the questions that I had, so that I could put this to rest as fast as I could. I don't know that I'd be putting a Facebook page up there and ignoring law enforcement, especially because they seem pretty pissed that the family isn't cooperating with them or, you know, reaching out to them. And I would have done that route. But you know what? There are many ways up the mountain, right? Maybe they'll get there one day.
I hope so. I hope that they can get the resolution, and whatever works out gets them to be okay with, I mean, because you're never really okay after that, but gets them the kind of closure that's necessary. I hope they can get that somehow. I truly do, because it sucks. I mean, if it does, I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong. I have no problem being wrong. I don't see, with the evidence that's available, that it happened the way it did. It just doesn't add up to me. There's just not enough pieces there.
Seems more likely to you in your mind that it's suicide, and for me, it's still there. I gotta get all the information. Yeah, I used to be an auditor for the state. I used to audit counselors, and I still get asked to do complaint investigations for the Department of Health. Oh, it is so fun. I love doing that work. But anyway, I love being able to get all the information before I'm able to make a definitive conclusion, which this is my irritation with people that say, oh, it's definitely this, it's definitely that. Well, how can you say that when you don't have the information, or you're not close to the family and you don't know that this guy's an empath unless you have spent time with him, you know? So anyway, that's my little mini rant. But we got to prepare for apparently the Drexel thing's coming on.
Yeah, I'm gonna go eat dinner. And
you should probably do that. Your wife needs some nourishment too, right? And your cat.
Well, she already ate, because we've been back here for 3.5 hours. So.
tell her, give her my regards. Tell her I hope she has a good time, and thank her for her patience. For sure.
I'll pass it on. Thank you for popping up and being a guest. Thanks everybody for watching. I'm going to go ahead and call it here and go eat, and then either A, just watch Drexel, or B, if he really wants
You're going to troll him.
Up. I don't know if I'll troll him or not, but if he wants me to pop up, I'll pop up. I know he's going to be pissed tonight. He's going to be pissed.
Okay. I'm all ready. So. I'm ready for that.
But thank you again for being on. I know it's a few hours of your time, so I'm going to rewatch that Critical K thing, because I really want to watch how she interacted with. I know it pissed me off when she did it. When I watched it the first time, it's just been a while.
Yeah, you didn't know me very well back then. Now that you know, and then I was I developed some thicker skin since then. But do rewatch it if you want to be fired up and mad at Critical K and her band of whoever's that swooped down upon me when I came up.
They seem to not really know what they were talking about, but that seems to be consistent with her. So.
Yeah.
But again, she has been a therapist for 25 years. So there you go.
Yeah.
But take care, everybody. Have a nice night, Tracy.
All right. See you guys later.
Have a great day. Take care. And I got to find my outro. Where'd it go? And
oh, yes. Love that outro. I'm going to listen to it on YouTube. Take care.
Peace, everybody.
Crash it, change it, melt, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it, slide it, get it, test it,